Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I'm also going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Philip Simon, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, and a literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Mic check.
Hello.
Good morning.
Can I get a mic check?
I hear you.
Hey, Paul.
Nathan, what shows today?
1392.
And Mondays was 1391?
Yeah.
Okay. How was the birthday party?
Very good. Very good.
I see you had no shortage of helium balloons.
Indeed.
Did they go down, go boom boom?
No.
Did it come in a canister, the helium?
Yes.
I thought so.
I
guess you're talking about birthday balloons, right?
Indeed.
Did they go up or down?
Up.
Sorry, real quick. Can I get another mic check? Can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah, I
hear you,
got you.
Paul. Yeah, and Neil. Hello.
What if you're upside down?
Look, Neil, there were no strings attached to this helium balloon test.
So listen, I got my car at Midas now. I got my car at Midas now. I want to hear what bullshit they tell me that another oxygen sensor's gone. When a mechanic already told me that there's a leak in the exhaust and whoever did the exhaust has to fix it.
Ah,
So I'm going to catch him out there right now.
you sure love controversy.
Well, I want people to be truthful with me.
I'm not arguing it. I'm like you. I recognize it. It's just it's taken so long for you and your muffler. It must be exhausting work.
I got the inspection though. I'm inspected.
You're inspected. Yeah, I remember that call. That was cool.
Now I just got to deal with the water coming in when it rains.
Duct tape.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to seal off the sunroof.
Of course you do.
Don't use it anyway. So what's the latest controversy? Fill me in. One day without flat earth debate and it feels like a lifetime has gone by.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, I don't even know what the arguments are anymore.
You don't know what the arguments are.
I went to
That's
go
a-
on 24/7, and they were talking about Jesus not being Almighty God, nothing to do with flat Earth.
Well, there's different topics people like to talk about.
So the
Well,
question was, did Adam and Eve have a belly button? And this guy says, well, you don't, God probably whipped up a womb. I said, whipped up a womb? Are you out of your mind?
Oh my gosh, they were made fully adults. Don't worry about the belly button.
Exactly. But that was something that, I always wondered too. Like, it's a question. The guy was like, you're trying to trick me. All you atheists are looking. Nobody was an atheist. They just had like you wonder because the umbilical cord, that's for the life source. And there's a reason for it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Did the first chicken that was made whole come out of an egg too, or what?
Just something to ponder. I don't think they
Well,
had belly buttons.
well, if they did, it would be a better argument to find out if it was an innie or an outie. Such silly topics. What were you going to say, John?
Wait a second. Let me get in on this belly button talk. My brother had an Audi once.
You better
he-
not have a
he got it
belly
fixed.
button ring. If I find out
Please.
you have a belly button ring, you're in trouble, Righteous.
I don't know, Righteous. What you say?
No, he
it's
just had
not
an Audi, but
almighty. I don't know.
What's
one
that?
time you had a doctor. One time he had a visiting a doctor, and the doctor said, "You can fix that." So he went in and he
Yeah.
got it fixed, and now it just looks like an innie, I guess. Looks perfect. I mean, not that I got anything against an Audi. I mean, I've seen him a long time as an Audi belly button. That was all right too. But
Well, I think
I meant
think
it looked
Righteous,
as an in belly button should look.
Righteous. I think we just answered Neil's question. Why people talk about other things than flat Earth?
All right. All right. Well, sorry I
What's
interrupted
going on with
something. You were going to
Hillbilly
ask
Blue
Paul something?
Balls? Any word on him? Is Anthony taking him to task?
He hasn't given me any recent updates, so typically when he's got all excited about something, he'll literally phone me at God knows what time and start detailing it.
And tell you to go live, right?
No, he's spoken to me since then, so yeah, he has done that. But what was the last update he gave me? I think we have had a show since then, so if there was anything new, I'd have told you.
Well, I just got an alert. Another 24 hours, more mass, less distance, still no acceleration. 8 minutes ago, Sleeping Warrior.
Yeah, they just need to explain gas as mass also in their vocabulary for mass.
What is mass?
I don't know, I'm not even going to attempt to define it, but what they're calling mass in their claim. Yeah? Anything that's got stuff, if you like, to keep it as crude as you like. Well, gas has stuff. Mass, what they call mass.
So it's particles? Is that what they're trying to say?
Well, you can get into the definitions of mass if you like. If you want to say mole when they say mass, the amount of stuff.
Well, that's what I was leading to. So mole is a better definition in this context, right?
I know, but they say mass. And now I await the right person at the right time, typically QE, once I've finished my explanation, once I've finished, to say, what's mass? It needs to be added at the end. But obviously, for contextual reasons, you need to keep it as simple and in their vocabulary as much as possible, and then put the disclaimers in afterwards. Otherwise, it becomes very convoluted.
So when you're talking to someone on the subject, you say mass until it's over, and then you explain or ask, what is it?
No, if it was in a discussion with somebody who's making the claim, as opposed to me pulling apart the claim and explaining with gas how it's debunked, no, you'd ask them on the spot. That would be the first thing you'd potentially ask them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So maybe I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, the conclusion, if let's say the debate's just taken place and you've been debating back and forth about mass without asking what mass is, it makes no sense to ask after the fact, well, what's mass? Because you've just been describing what it does and doesn't do. But if it's a summary with no opponent, then you describe it with their language.
Got it.
And then
Yeah,
debunk
okay.
it. Yeah. But in the first instance, if somebody comes in and says, well, mass attracts mass, what's mass? Let's hear you define it.
Well, you did that, I think, last week, and QE says, what's mass? And you say, I'm doing it as a summary of them begging the question.
Well, no, they've got a couple of different descriptions of what mass is. And he even asked me, he's like, well, how many? When you say their description, how many? And I'm like, 2. But, you can argue back and forth on our own side about that. But their description still uses that word. So when it's dumbed down to the point where somebody can understand an explanation that's being pulled apart and explained by the same person, obviously I've got to, I've got to use their words.
Right. So the context in which we talk about it is, when have we seen this so-called mass attract other so-called mass? We've never seen it.
Yeah, precisely. That's a nice enough, loose enough disclaimer within the statement, whatever that is, mass, to keep it within their language. But that would be perfect language for an opponent to hear, as opposed to a summary to an audience.
So
I must interrupt. Shocking news. Truth was told. The guy said you have a leak in your gasket. Wow, I'm amazed.
That's shady around by you with mechanics, then.
Oh yeah.
Fair enough.
he bought his car from a mechanic, right?
Now the thing is, I'm going to see if they're going to charge me, because that's no charge. They've done the whole exhaust. So if there's a leak, they got to fix that. I ain't paying a damn thing. $2,200 is enough.
It's a leak in your roof you're going to fix.
Yeah, that I have to. What am I going to do? I'm already into the car so much, so I'll find that out next. That's around the corner.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? You buy an old car from somebody, regardless of its age, and you end up pumping a load more money in after the fact. So I thought, well, that's going to happen regardless of what car I buy when I bought the last car. So I'm going to buy it as cheap as humanly possible, obviously in as good a condition as I can get for the cheapest possible. And then when you start pumping money into it and you end up at the amount that you probably would have bought something, I don't know, a year or 2 younger, but you just still have to pump the same exact money into that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're doing okay with yours, right? You haven't pumped anything into yours. What,
No,
you have
but
a battery
initially-
issue one time?
Initially, I pumped $5,000 into it. So I changed all
don't
of
you
the
remember?
brakes. Yeah, I pumped an absolute shed load of money into it. Did body work, painted it, you name it.
That's cosmetics, though. I'm
No, but
talking
along with
about
okay, not just cosmetics. It had new brakes, it had new clutch, it had a full service, spark plugs. All the fluids were changed.
that's
So-
maintenance.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in this context, Neil shouldn't buy a car with a mass of problems.
Right. But, yes, what I'm saying though, Neil, is by the time you've done little things like the gas struts on the boot, and you've fixed a door that doesn't lock correctly, and you've valeted it, you've cleaned the carpets, and you've had any dents and dings pulled out and painted, and you've bought spark plugs, and you've bought all the fluids, and you've bought a clutch, and you've paid for them all to be fitted, and you've bought brakes, and you've paid for them to be fitted. And so it goes on. By the time you're at the end of that long list, you could say, oh, well, that's just cosmetic. Well, yeah, you could say that. But by the same token, if you bought something that was a couple of years younger, instead of 800 quid, it cost $5,000, as they did when I looked at them, well, it doesn't mean that that's not going to have any cosmetic issues, because they all did. You can just live
Listen,
with them.
I could drive a car out of the showroom and something will be wrong with it.
Exactly.
Oh, so
That's
it's
true.
you. At the
Yeah,
end.
it's me. It's me. I'll give you a fast, for instance. I take a certain way to work and home every day. Never a problem. Until I had to be somewhere the other day, there was a detour. Left work early to get there on time, and a detour. And there's only one road that gets me to where I had to go, and it was shut down. So they take you on an alternate route, which was an hour and 10 minutes. I counted it to take me right back to the same spot to enter the bridge from a different road. And then when I entered the bridge, the detour was down. So tell me how that happens.
That's Sod's Law, we call it.
Murphy's
I'd-
Law?
Sod's
I'd
Law.
say you went I'd say you went a bridge too far.
I was losing my mind.
Let's. If I ever take a road trip with you, let me drive, okay?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If I'm in the car, you're stuck. That's it. Whatever. Murphy's Law is going to hit us all. Whatever could go wrong will go wrong.
I'll take the risk just for the entertainment value. Oh.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Paul, 10th Man, Arwin, who joined right in the middle of my intro to distract me completely, Neil, Paul, father of a stolen child, did I miss anybody? No, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello, hello. Let's get straight into the housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
No evidence for it, yet the ballers claim that there's a curve.
Well, that's a problem.
Well, it's supposed to hide boats and buildings.
It doesn't?
No.
So where did they go? Because I was looking at something the other day, and that's still a proof of a sphere Earth that boats go over the horizon hull first.
Well,
They still claim that.
I think we asked the question, is the horizon the beginning of Earth curve?
Yeah, the edge that they need, but don't have on a sphere. So they have to acquire an edge from something, tangent point, by way of R presupposition, dip angle to horizon. That's where they get their edge. At the moment, people are saying spheres don't have edges. It's like, yeah, that's the bit that obscures your view and is claimed to block boats and buildings. That's your edge. And you acquire it from a flat plane by assuming an R value. Now then we present something called the black swan, and you tell us that that horizon physical tangent point edge Earth curve has been refracted, meaning you can no longer acquire the R value, meaning the model's dead. Bye-bye, globe.
Yeah, they have a lot of problems. They have major problems.
Yeah, the black swan was like a boxer hitting the other boxer in the liver. Can't recover.
Yeah, well, you can't have a bigger Earth either, because that knocks everything out of whack.
Or you can't have the edge or the radius work out if you could never see it. I've never seen it.
Right. Well, the ballers have a huge existential problem. You see, when you make a mistake, you can correct that mistake and then move on and learn from that mistake. But when you deny evidence, then you can never get over that thing you're holding on to, which has been disproven through evidence, and it's going to basically hang on onto your soul, onto your spirit forever.
Well, what's our evidence? Because they claim we don't have evidence, and we're claiming you don't have evidence for a sphere, but we have evidence of it being flat and motionless.
Because that's how it presents itself.
Denial never resolves itself.
No, you've got to understand, Neil, that the Earth presents itself as flat. And that is a point that is conceded by both sides. It's then the question of, well, how do you observe it being spherical? Which makes the claim of it being spherical the extraordinary claim. Not the claim that it's flat. It's obviously and observably flat. As I say, a point that's conceded on both sides. Well, then you've got to prove the...
But...
Go on, Neil.
No, I was going to say, I agree 100%, but then we do have this black swan that gives us all the evidence we need. Correct?
Black Swan's... No. The Black Swan doesn't prove anything in terms of proving the Earth's flat. That's not what it's for. It disproves...
It proves it's not a sphere.
It proves it's not a sphere, and then the standing point, if you want, the obvious and observable nature of our reality, beyond the extraordinary claim, then takes precedent, as it should anyway. That's how we observe the world. But beyond that, it's not that you can assert modus tollens in the Black Swan and then say, therefore, the Earth is flat, because that's not the conclusion.
I understand what you're
Conclusion
saying.
is also
They're making
sphere.
a claim. They got to come up with the evidence.
Right, no one's hoax wax. Go ahead.
I think it was Paul.
No one's beeswax. My bad. Want to add something?
Nobody claims the Earth is curved.
I said the conclusion to the Black Swan is also not that it's not a sphere.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. What's the conclusion? Go ahead and read it for us.
Read it. I know it off by heart. If the Earth is a sphere, radius 3959.
Okay, recite it then.
I was just in the middle of it. If the Earth's a sphere, radius 3959, then every distance to Earth curve can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. And the Black Swan shows beyond all certitude that the demonstrable distance to the horizon is beyond the physical limitations of a sphere, therefore the Earth's not a sphere.
Therefore, the Earth is not a sphere with the radius 3959.
No, therefore the Earth's not a sphere. Because it can't be inflatable.
Okay,
now, can
well,
it?
if that's actually the conclusion, then it's not modus tollens.
Why not?
Modus tollens is if P, then Q, not P, therefore not Q.
If the Earth is a sphere, maybe
With
that bit
the
slipped you by.
radius of
Maybe that bit
3959.
slipped you by. No?
Well, he read it wrong anyway. It says if P, then Q, not Q. He said not P.
Oh, he's a bigger Earth guy. I know it already just by him saying 3959.
Woo, Jupiter Earth.
It's a
Yeah, and
masterpiece.
what about all the stars and everything and all the planets? They rely on
You
that
can't just
3959.
you can't just cut the if statement in half in the second half of the argument. That's not how logic works.
Yeah, and you can't just inflate a rock, can you?
You can't inflate a what?
A rock, radius 3959, spherical in shape. Can you change a rock?
It doesn't say it changes. It just says that's not what it is.
Yeah, it's not a
So the
radius
only
3959 sphere. That's correct.
There you go. Yeah. So that's the conclusion. It's not a sphere at all. It's just not a sphere with the dimensions that are
Oh,
in
you're
the
an idiot.
premise.
Well, then your model is broken.
So then heliocentric model that asserts radius 3959. Maybe you could tell us that at best we've debunked your radius that you absolutely rely upon for the model.
That's what I just said.
If you ignore refraction, that's correct.
Sorry, refraction. Your refraction's got an R in it, my friend. Radius 3959.
No, I
7 over... Don't interrupt me. Your refraction has got an R in it at radius 3959. So, what are you talking about? You're breaking up.
Get a better mic.
There is
will
no
you?
R in Snell's law. Try again.
Well,
Nathan.
Sorry, Snell's law isn't
There is no
terrestrial.
radius
Excuse
value.
me.
There is
Snell's
no,
law. Sorry, is Snell's law part of your terrestrial refraction calculation in the Earth geometry that is asserted to prove Earth's a sphere? No, Snell's law is not.
Yes. Snell's law is how we calculate refraction.
No,
yes.
it is not. It is terrestrial refraction.
Snell's law is how we calculate refraction.
That's how you calculate refraction, but not terrestrial refraction, where you assume light bends around the sphere that you assume. That's your refraction. So no, it's
Snell's
not.
law is
I'll
how we
say it
calculate
again while you
refraction,
interrupt the
yes.
conclusion for the third time, because you don't like it when you're proven wrong. The refraction on a globe is terrestrial refraction, not Snell's law. You are wrong. The rate of terrestrial refraction is based on R, 7/6 in standard form. That is your refraction, not Snell's law.
Snell's law is used to calculate any refraction.
That's fascinating. And on a globe, you use terrestrial refraction, not Snell's law. So while refraction's real and you can use Snell's law to calculate it, that is not what is used in the heliocentric claim of a sphere-Earth horizon maths. That would be 7/6 of a radius. That's 4 times. Tell me that refraction's calculated with Snell's law again, so I can tell you that that's not the refraction in your globe math. Tell me again, 5th time.
I don't use the calculation.
Don't give a crap what you use. The globe uses an R value, dick brain. Do I
No,
care what you
one-
use? You're a nobody. Meanwhile, the globe math uses R. Do you understand that or not?
One person that
Do you understand that your globe math for refraction uses R because you're claiming Snell's law and you're wrong 5 times? You've claimed it and I've refuted it, and you haven't conceded. What's wrong with you, man?
one person that QE found uses
Sorry. One person that QE found, you're going to try and reverse the burden of proof on us, are you?
I thought their
I'm not reversing the
calculator
burden.
was based on it.
Excuse me, terrestrial refraction is what is applied in standard format at 7/6 of the radius. That is the refraction used when you assume a sphere and bendy light around the sphere. That's what's used if you think you're on a globe and you're claiming refraction. That's 6 times, not Snell's law. 6 times. I'd like you to concede. I know it's where your argument dies because you're claiming the horizon's refracted. No, and you're also claiming that it's refracted with an R value that you've already conceded you can't have if Earth a sphere radius 3959 debunked in modus tollens. So you haven't got 3959 radius to apply your refraction, my friend.
you keep saying that's what I use.
I don't care what you do. Globe does, dick brain. Do I care? You're a nobody. The Western world thinks they're on a sphere radius 3959, and the refraction applied in that assumption has got an R in it. 7 times.
Stop telling me what I use, Nathan.
I don't care what you use. I'm not telling you what you use. I'm telling you what the globe does. Now, you're here fighting for a globe and saying, well, I'll use Snell's law. Oh, really? Well, that's fascinating when we've got globe Earth geometry that uses an R value for their refraction. You're not using it. Oh, well, then you're in the wrong place. Go and debate with some tosser on the street who couldn't give a crap about the actual rhetoric that's being asserted for the entirety of the Western world. You are but one man. Clear?
Or maybe present what your model is then.
Yeah, show me how Snell's law is sandwiched into a globe model somehow.
You use Snell's law every time.
Don't tell me what I'll use. Tell me where you've got a citation that says Snell's law applies to a bendy light around a sphere. Show me that. Bearing in mind that we've had Mick West, the guy who's got these calculations, and his claim that it's Snell's law, with a little link to Snell's law, just below where it actually applies 7/6R. Bearing in mind we've had Mick West over a barrel on this, yeah? A guy who's actually got a calculator for Earth curve. Not you, just some tosser. We've had Mick West over a barrel on this, my friend. You absolutely, unequivocally use R in your refraction calculation for a globe Earth. You do if you're a glober. Yeah, I'm not stereotyping, I'm telling you. That's what you will do if you believe you're on a sphere, radius 3959. That's what you'll do. Now, I've challenged the high priest of this calculation, Mick West, in his maths for it. You, on the other hand, say you don't do it. Well, where's your calculator then?
I use Snell's law.
I don't care what you use. There's globe Earth maths. Have you got a globe Earth calculator with Snell's law in it?
You do care what
Don't stutter. Have you got a calculator for a globe Earth with Snell's law being applied and the maths thereafter to back up your claim that Snell's law is applicable? It isn't. Terrestrial refraction is. I've said that 9 times. So have you got...
do care what I use because
Have you got a globe Earth calculator with Snell's law being applied? Yes or no?
yes,
Let's see it.
you want Snell's law.
No. Third time, you dumbo. Third time. Are you deaf? A globe Earth calculator that assume light bends around it that says, no, that's because of Snell's law and the maths that would entail. Do you have that?
Yeah, give me the atmospheric conditions between the viewing point and the observer, and I can do it for you.
You can do it with a calculator that you'll provide us, like the one Mick West provides that we've grilled him
I could
over his lack of
approximate-
application.
I could
Why are you
approximate
interrupting
the
me?
calculator.
Why are you interrupting me, Fundy? That's a question I'd like an answer. Why are you interrupting me?
Because his balls
You
dead.
just keep going on, Nathan.
Because I'm what? Going on about the fact that you've said the horizon's moved because it's refracted. I've pointed out that no, your refraction needs are. You've already conceded at the bare minimum that definitely haven't got that radius because of modus tollens. You conceded that. Didn't quite say the old Mr. Sensible, at best you would have debunked the radius, but that's pretty much what you said. Now we're in a point where you're saying refraction, your refraction needs are. But you're saying no, Snell's law. Yeah, I highlight to an audience that you will bait and switch refractive effects in the atmosphere by way of 7/6R. That's something I educate my audience with on an almost daily basis. Now we're at the 9th rendition of the point your argument died, and you're not conceding, Fundy. Why not? It's not Snell's law. You don't have a calculator that's got Snell's law applicable. You saying you can do it on the fly isn't a globe Earth calculator asserting heliocentric sphere Earth edges getting in the way of boats and buildings and light refracting around at a rate of R. No, that's 10 times, friend. Hello?
Can I speak now?
You haven't got a globe Earth calculator with Snell's law applied because it doesn't apply Snell's law. It applies terrestrial refraction. You just need to concede. It's 11 renditions. Just say, yeah, I get it. Not Snell's law. Refraction based on R. That's what your globe model uses. You don't have to like it. 12 times. Hey, Adam.
Afternoon,
Okay.
everyone.
You keep insisting on what I have to use.
The globe, not you. You can do what you like, you babbling moron. You can stand on the street and tell people that you can do the maths for a globe Earth with Snell's law. Meanwhile, there is a standard calculator, and all of them apply R-based refraction, without exception. Do you understand that, or not? Do you think that you are suddenly the arbiter of a new calculation that uses Snell's law? If so, show us this model and the maths for it.
It's not a new calculation by any means. It's just a more accurate one.
There is no calculation for Snell's law in globe Earth maths. It uses R, terrestrial refraction. You're just thick.
Okay.
Yeah, you are thick.
Okay. If you say so, Nathan.
I do say so. I understand your globe Earth model and its requirement to bend light around a claim to be curved atmosphere at a rate of R. That's what your globe model claims. You don't have to like it. The fact that you want to utilize a bait and switch, like all of them, where they'll talk about refractive effects like Snell's law and say, well, Snell's law's real, therefore light bends around the rate at 7/6R around a globe Earth. That's the bait and switch. I've just stopped you doing it.
Yeah, you can't get over on Nathan with that.
It's not a big switch.
Oh, really?
If you
So
have
you
really
think that where it says 7/6R in Mick West's calculator, and we asked, why are you saying Snell's law? And then he shows a little link to Snell's law that doesn't apply to the calculation. You think that you can do better.
gotta find
What's
the
your
user,
calculator
Nathan.
published under? What's it published under?
Are you done? Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done ripping you a new one. What's your calculator published under? What's the website for your calculator?
Unmuting me?
What? No, no way! He's asking if I'm muting him. I've recited the rebuttal to your claim of refraction, Snell's law. 13 times, and while I'm giving you the rendition, you're asking if I'm muting you. No, that's you talking through me. Scum.
He's pushing a curved atmosphere, but he's not saying that directly.
You're saying
Can
Snell's
I
law
tell
is
you
just
how to
wrong.
calculate it now?
Right.
What's the
Where do you
website for your
get your curved
calculator?
atmosphere?
What's the website for your calculator?
I don't have an approximation calculator.
You don't have a calculator? Oh, right. Well, I've
God.
quizzed heliocentric priests far up the food chain compared to you. Like Mick West, who does have a calculator. Very heavily referenced, my friend, Metabunk. Now, I have had him over a barrel and ripped him a new asshole based on his assumption of R. And he needs that R for his refraction at 7/6R. You are just a tosser. Clear, tosser?
I'm sure.
How
Nick
does
West's
terrestrial
calculator-
You are a tosser. I'm
Involve
telling you,
Snell's law.
tosser. Yeah, that your refraction based on Snell's law is not applied in globe Earth maths. Don't have to like it.
You're muting me.
Keep telling me I'm muting you while you talk through me, eh?
You're fundy muting me.
Mate, I'm telling you in no uncertain terms that your calculations need R. You're saying, no, Mick West's not right. That's just one
Stop
calculation
telling
that
me
uses
what
R.
my calculations need. You don't know what my calculations need.
What's the website for your calculator?
I don't want an approximation, Nathan.
Sorry, that's not an answer. I asked for a website. He says he hasn't got approximation. What's the website for your calculator?
I don't want an approximation.
I'm not asking for an approximation. I'm asking for a website address.
Well, that's what the calculators do, Nathan.
What's the website
The
address?
calculator.
Nathan, every calculator you could.
Don't tell me what every calculator does. This is when a scumbag who's had the same exact rebuttal put to him 13 times and then starts chanting through me about whether or not I'm muting him does when he's asked for a website address for his calculator.
He's
I've already
silly.
told-
He's pushing a curved atmosphere, but denying R.
Worse than that, Tenth Man. He's literally connecting two things that don't connect. So how does Snell's law involve with terrestrial refraction, which is the thing that is claimed to displace the horizon away from the geometric horizon visually? How do those two relate? Can
Because
I explain that?
That's what Nathan
because
is asking
Snell-
him, and he's
because
avoiding it.
Snell's law. It is because
Well-
Snell's law can calculate. It does not matter the type.
Really?
Well, see, it,
What?
it's noise. I don't know what's going
Sorry, Snell's law is Elijah. You're causing all sorts of chaos. So, no
on.
one,
It's not me.
no one. Hello, can you put yourself on mute? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you're causing audio chaos. Sheesh. Snell's law can calculate refraction. Yeah? Well, your refraction's orthographic-based refraction. You can't calculate that with Snell's law. Because you never get a position where you've got a
It doesn't
photograph.
matter.
Why are you talking to me? Fundy mute time? Yeah, you can't calculate orthographic refraction with Snell's law. You never get a circumstance where you have a picture with your own head in the frame and the target on the right-hand side, you on the left-hand side. That's the refraction that is used in the globe model. It's orthographically represented and cannot be done in Snell's law.
It doesn't matter what type of.
Sorry, it doesn't matter. That sounds like a very rumpus reply. Yes, it does matter. Your worldview is represented in orthographic, and you can't do that in Snell's law. You can apply 7/6R terrestrial refraction, and tell me it doesn't matter third time.
If you have light entering a substance at an angle of incidence,
No, you don't.
you can.
Not in a geographic Earth curve mathematics. You've just ignored what I've just told you. Orthographic. Hello? Do you know what that means? What's orthographic mean?
I don't know why it means you can't. use
What
Snell's-
does orthographic mean? Go.
Why would orthographic mean you can't?
What
use
does it
Snell's law?
mean? What does it mean? Not what. Don't ask me about how it applies. Tell us what it means. I suspect you don't know.
What it means? Is relevant. You're
Seems
saying
you've
you
got-
can't use it for Snell's law.
Don't tell me what we can't do. What is orthographic view?
I'm not telling you what you can't do. You said you can't do it. You said that.
I'm asking you
not?
what orthographic is, and you don't seem to know. If I'm telling you as a rebuttal that you can't apply Snell's law based on the light and how it moves, when orthographic view and globe Earth can't represent that, I want to know that you understand how the rebuttal works, and I'm asking, what's orthographic view? You're not answering. Don't you know? I take it you don't.
Right.
Why can't
Well,
you
at
use
least if he
Snell's
doesn't
law
know,
for
then don't
orthographic?
opinion about it if you don't know, because that's really stupid.
Why can't you use orthographic?
Don't ask me a question because you don't know the answer. Tell us what orthographic view is.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, shut up. You're a dick. You don't know. You're thick. Yeah, I say orthographic view can't be represented when you talk about Snell's law. You say it doesn't matter. I ask you what it is. You say you don't know. Or you ask me a question. You're thick.
How would you know if it doesn't matter when
Arwin,
you
shut
don't know
up.
what it is?
You don't know what orthographic view is, my friend. Good. Finally. Snell's law seems like a very slow way to calculate things. High 10th man, says Godzilla 37.
Hi.
Sorry, Arwin. I want to hear the end of the conclusion. With him stunned
It is
silent.
a slow way, but it's an
Sorry,
accurate
don't
way.
talk through me, dickhead. Your silence was the time you had to talk. That little gap was when you should talk, not when I'm talking. Okay? Now, I asked you what something was. You didn't know. That's the end of your time. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just pissing in the wind, hoping for the best.
And you're just asserting that you
Shut up! Do you understand? Shut up!
without explaining.
Do you
why.
understand? Shut up. Your time here's over. At the point I asked you what orthographic view was, and you start asking me a barrage of questions about it, that admirably demonstrates you don't know what it is. Therefore, your time here is done. You don't understand the argument. You don't understand the rebuttal.
didn't ask
I'm
you a
not going to
question
explain it to you
about
while you interrupt me.
orthographic.
Shut up. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
The CGI proved it to me.
Are we done with
I
that
can
guy?
imagine it now, so that means it must be real.
Yes, we are done with that guy.
Did
Didn't
I-
understand the
Did I
rebuttal.
miss funding this already?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as we get to comment on it later, that's fine.
Comment on it now. Feel free.
Okay,
Thanks, Nathan
well,
says well.
he's presuming a curved atmosphere. So he's saying one thing, and then he's trying to deny the R, but he's assuming a curved atmosphere. Where do you get the curved atmosphere if it's not 7 over 6R?
It is. I told him that for 13 times.
Where did I assume a curved atmosphere?
You don't, the globe does. You tried that trick about 7 times. It's a globe claim. If you're a glober, it's your claim. It's not stereotyping, it's a fact with the globe. If you believe in it, that's your claim. Don't have to like it. It's not stereotyping fallacy, and I don't care what you, one nameless, faceless individual, says. It is utterly inconsequential when the entire Western world... This is the 3rd time I've repeated this. Yeah? Shut up. Tired of you. You're a moron.
Yeah, this
And-
is
and
Mark
look,
Taylor level.
globe-
You need to inform
globe
yourself
claims-
a little better.
Globe claims are stereotyping now.
Well,
That's pretty
well,
funny.
so with Snell's law, you have like the light entering a second medium in which the angle of the light changes. Now, when you Google Snell's law and you click images, like that's what it shows. It's not in, there's no example where you have light curving around a curved surface. None. There's none that describes obstruction being moved because of refraction. That's why I like when you asked him to, get a citation, and he just wouldn't, because it doesn't exist.
Right. They use 7
No,
over
he
6R.
doesn't know. He doesn't even know the difference. He's very ill-informed.
Right. Got to shout out a couple of super chats. So shout out to Retro Bill. It says, regarding Earth curve, Ball has consistently referenced the studies where surveyors measured triangles with angles adding up to over 180 degrees. What's the best way to address this? Their angles adding up to 180 degrees are based on the presupposition of the zenith measurement being taken to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, Retro Bill. That's why. So if you take the measurement and assume you're on a sphere, and then move over and take a new zenith, assuming you're on a sphere, that's going to happen. Shout out to Retro Bill for the super chat. Thank you very much. Also, Godzilla37, 10th man doesn't get my pun. I want my money back. Let's just read your super chat again.
I got it. I had to go look at it first, and I just responded to it. That was clever.
Now, he says, Snell's law seems like a very slow way to calculate things. Oh, snail's law. Very good.
Ooh, nice.
Very good, very good. Was there another one? Go on, John.
I was going to say, like, the whole point of the dip angle is to measure the radius. If the horizon's not geometric, you don't have a radius to measure. We're talking about what is, and they're trying to give justifications for why they can't measure this now. That's ridiculous.
How do you get a dip angle of an apparent position?
Hold on, just one sec, Chocolate. Measure this. This is Earth curve. Right? It's the title when they've got a load of horizons composited together. This is Earth curve. So when they're saying this has moved with refraction, it's the horizon they're talking about, and the horizon's their Earth curve. So Earth curves moved with refraction, they're saying, making their entire claim a complete sham, farce, nonsense, contradiction, paradox.
Well, I remember Andrew Thomas Young, which he said QE only uses one source, which is not true, but he said that all his refraction studies were done over a plane surface.
Right, when they're talking about real refraction, they will. Snell's law. Yeah, it'll be applied with two different densities. It was detailed earlier by somebody. We're not talking about it bending around a sphere. That's not what Snell's law's doing.
Yeah, and then he said that if you wanted to work on what he's trying to say, meaning a globe Earth, we need to take geometric considerations.
Yeah, radius.
Bingo.
Yeah, but the geometric consideration has to be there, of course, because the horizon is not actually a geometric sphere edge. You have to first consider that in order to engage in the mind experiment.
Bingo again.
Well, this backpedal of refraction, the word that was used to actually call us, all types of flurf and other, names just to say, oh, they think that perspective is a thing. That's only a thing in drawings and things like this. And now they're talking about refraction, and it's like, well, if you Google, how to get the distance to the horizon, when you talk about artillery and projectiles, if you just Google this stuff right now, none of it says anything about refraction at all. It's very weird what the ballers have done over the course of a year to not admit defeat.
Just gonna show you something. So camera on to do this. Just bear with me a second. So there's a few people that are saying a globe doesn't have an edge. Spheres don't have edges. Yeah, but you need to acquire one to do the geometry. And I'm going to demonstrate what your sphere edge is when you're claiming Earth has a sphere edge for a horizon. So this is, let's just put my camera on, my sphere shape, not a globe Earth, just a sphere shape. And from behind the edge, we're going to have something appearing from behind the obstruction that is the edge. An obstruction, a limitation to your view. Now that is the edge of a sphere that they claim boats are going over and buildings are being blocked by. That is your edge, called Earth curve. So when you're in the comments denying that spheres have edges, it's the one that the boats and buildings are claimed to be blocked by, just so you know.
Yeah, and please come in and keep denying that shit. Meanwhile, this is what kids are being taught. This is what people like Bill Nye, Neil Smoking the Grass Tyson is showing. So coming in here and saying, can we have a citation? This is our claim. And, oh, that's a stereotype of globe claim. Like, stop being morons, Globers. Just give it up. Get a grip.
Oh, we've got two people trying to present. Hold on, Adam. Flirspective.
Yeah,
What's this?
We made the Urban Dictionary.
No way! That's great. That's what the Globers are currently claiming. When we show them a boat disappearing bottom up prior to the Earth curve edge claimed to be obstruction, that's an edge that the boat would go over. When that happens before that distance, ballers now tell us that it's just the optics, it's just the perspective. Well, we're going to rename what they claim when they start asserting optics that aren't included in their mathematics. We call that flirspective. Perspective's obviously real, doesn't need renaming. But when you start claiming perspective and you've got a bull belief, it becomes flirspective.
Funny how something y'all came up with like 3 or 4 years ago came back to bite you, huh? What we're going to tell you guys. You guys, are you claiming flirspective optics? Oh, really? That's adorable. Welcome to Flat Earth.
Indeed.
That's lovely, isn't it? How cocky they were 3.5 years ago.
I'm gonna spend a week or two.
And they act like we don't remember that shit.
For
They
the
act like.
Go on, Eli.
I'm gonna spend a week or two for the benefit of myself, which will benefit everyone else. But because I'm tired of not having the appropriate clip for the time that they say we've never claimed an Earth curve edge, because there's just countless shows and countless hours that I've fallen in love with this show so long ago, and I have not gone back to the material, back to the days where there was like 5 or 6, globe earthers arguing about this stuff, but on the opposite, just having a different, opinion. It's ridiculous. I'm gonna do that. Like next 2 weeks, I'm gonna look at old, back in the day, Nathan Oakley videos for that kind of stuff.
But going back and looking at Thin Nathan, excellent.
Let's start with 267, where Mick West clearly tells us that R is based on the presupposition of the standard model.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mick West.
Shortly after being absolutely ripped to shreds based on links in his website that took you to descriptions of things like Snell's law that had absolutely zero association with their claim of 7/6 of the radius value. He had that ripped out of him before we pointed out that they assume R in the first instance, which he admitted to.
Whilst you're there, Nathan, on that bit, that's listening to the waffle earlier with regards to Snell's law and trying to apply it to a medium, because Snell's law applies to a medium change. It's at the point of interface of the medium change that you do this. So I was just doing a quick look to see if you could apply Snell's law to the same medium of varying density. And the answer is no. I'll just read the conclusion. The equivalent of Snell's law is derived for refraction in a medium with a varying index of refraction, demonstrating the use of the Euler-Lagrange optimization technique. So you have to go and it's not sounds like a porn euphemism, but you have to calculate what's called fluff density, which is to do with the varying density of the medium. But what I thought was interesting was just the statement at the beginning. The second big assumption is the potential field is static, not varying with time. There is no consideration given to energy conservation, momentum conservation, curved space-time, dilated local time. This is a purely mathematical treatment with idealized conditions. So none of this is experiment-based. It's all mathematical. Ooh. If you're gonna
all abstract, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's
clearly
fine.
Told by them.
Just because it's abstract, it's a description. Maths is just a language. It's describing something that occurs when you have light traversing a medium change. That's what it's describing mathematically. Does that mean that it's immediately an invalid description? No. In the same way as me describing how we don't have a geometric sphere edge for a horizon, it's just me describing something with language. Now, if that language is maths or English, it doesn't make it wrong automatically. It's just a description.
That's what they're saying. They're saying it is wrong. It's wrong. It's the wrong language to use Snell's law is the wrong language when you're discussing the same medium with varying density. You have to use the Euler-Lagrange refraction. That's the language to describe it mathematically, not Snell.
Oh, right. Oh, I see.
Well,
So you're
that's funny.
saying where it could or was being asserted to apply in the mathematics of Earth curve geometry, it can't. It's the wrong language when talking about Snell's law in maths. I see your point. Excellent, Adam. Debunking the guy completely and concisely. Thank you. Excellent.
You have to use Euler-Lagrange in fluff.
Euler-Lagrange in fluff.
Yeah. So I said,
I see. And at any stage
That's why the
hold
other day
on, hold
when
on,
Ed
don't, hold on. In
Snell's
Euler,
law.
hold on.
Sorry.
In Euler-Lagrange in fluff, does it at any stage in this mathematics assert that light bends around a presupposed radius value?
well, this is what they're talking. I've only had a quick skim, but yeah, they cover capture radius at point of source and curvature of trajectory. But this is based on the fluff density, it's saying, so not based on R, because obviously it's the phase, it's the difference in density that's supposed to be causing it. They're just assuming a link to R, but actually in the actions of the photon, it can't have anything to do with R. It has to do with the medium, and then they're just then the perversion, isn't it, to make it fit the alleged curve that they then say is to do with Snell's law. That as this is saying, no, you can't use Snell's law for that, but it is to do with the density of the medium and the other mathematical stuff. It's quite too complicated for me to get my head around in a couple of minutes, but that seems to be the principle that they're making. It is not, you can't use a language that describes refraction occurring from one medium to the next where they're distinct mediums. You have to use this, which it talks about varying density of the same medium.
Okie doke. Thank you, Adam. Much obliged.
Hey, Adam, just to be clear, isn't the atmosphere the same medium? Just to be clear.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, it's not. As you look out from your position, if you're talking about atmosphere, then you've got a varying gradient as you look out from your position, as the angle changes as the ground falls away from you. But that's all summed up by one word, atmosphere. So sphere-shaped air, no, that doesn't work in the same way. But that's why whenever these are described, the actual effects of refraction, they're not doing them over spherical surfaces. They're doing them over flat
Well,
surfaces.
let me rephrase. Is the air one medium?
Yes.
Wait a minute, Paul. You're asking, is the air the same medium as the air?
That's correct. That's what he's asking. But in the sphere air, then no is the answer. When you assume a sphere air, no. From your vantage point, no. It changes as you look out. That's an assumption that it changes. Of course, that assumption comes along with a terrestrial refraction claim that light's bending around at pretty much the same rate as the ground's falling away from you to straighten it all back out again.
Well, let me be even more clear. Hold on, let me be even more clear. I'm looking at something out in the distance over some water, and between me and the thing I'm looking at, is that the same medium?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. Just making sure.
But not if you say atmosphere first.
I mean, it is a point that does seem to need clarity, because a lot of Globers will say, well, Snell's law explains black swan. It's like, wait a minute. Like Adam said before, doesn't Snell's law talk about two mediums? So that's where Paul's like, hey, is the air the same medium as the air? Because that would be one medium.
Now, here's where I would say, okay, give me an example. But there is no example of. They don't even have illustrations of that. Like they don't have illustrations of someone looking out into the distance.
No, that's
That's
why
not what Snell's law is referring to.
Well, that's what I'm talking about when I said to the guy, no, it's orthographic representations in globe Earth maths. Moving on. Any more on this before we move on? Any evidence of gas pressure without a container?
Ha. Gradient.
Two containers, maybe.
maybe 2 containers?
Maybe.
How are you going to have gas particles colliding with not the walls of a container?
They don't. They just carry on. If the sky was a vacuum, for example, then the gas we breathe would fill that space because it'd have nothing to bounce off of. So it would just bounce off the ground if it was going down for whatever reason,
Right.
and go straight back up again.
Oh, and I'm willing to even state
the
that,
only way...
let's just say there was an opening suddenly, like the lid was taken off, right? Which has to be there in order for the container to be closed and we have gas pressure. Then everything in it, the gas-wise, right? The entire gradient is going to universally expand. Like the entire gradient is going to stretch up and expand in all directions. Like even as it is gradiated, it's going to instantly expand uniformly in all directions, pushing everything out, right? Even though it was gradiated, there was lower pressure at the top, the entire thing will expand in all directions, gradient and all, until it's all gone.
Indeed.
Rumpus uses a scientific word. He says it wanders off.
Yeah, all the gas we're breathing would wander off into space if there was nothing containing the gas. Further to that, we wouldn't have that scenario because Arwin's describing gas with containment, having the containment removed and suddenly dispersing because it's no longer got anything to press upon to maintain the pressure. Now, I can translate that one step further back in terms of the history of heliocentrism and say, if the sky was a vacuum, as per the heliocentric model, we would never develop gas pressure in the first place. Gas would leave the ground and just dissipate into space immediately. That's all the gas would ever do, so you'd never develop pressure. Sky's not a vacuum. Space is fake.
So the only thing left to do is to think of another context in which you would also have to change the definition of gas pressure.
They do. Well, they don't. They say it doesn't apply to the atmosphere. Neither does gas law in general. PV equals nRT doesn't apply to atmosphere. Second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to atmosphere. Their assumption that air takes the shape of a sphere doesn't fall in line with natural law. That's the bottom line.
I just got one question. What were all these laws discovered again? I'm still not clear about that. Where was it discovered again?
Natural laws in nature. The descriptions of things that occur in nature, natural laws. This is how it occurs, and that's how the description is given. And they're saying the way things occur in nature, as described in these natural laws, isn't how our nature is. That's what the heliocentrist says. So where gas expands into a volume, our gas doesn't expand into our volume. Our volume space and our gas isn't expanding into it because that law doesn't apply. That's their reason. The natural law, the law of nature, doesn't apply to the model of a world that's a sphere in a vacuum. That just means we're not in a vacuum and we're not on a sphere. Doesn't mean that natural law doesn't apply to the world we're living in. It does. They're laws of nature. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
That's just nonsense.
With the black swan, I think I can rebut the angular velocity conservation they claim.
They don't claim that.
So the rebuttal when we point out there's no Coriolis.
I'll just say it again. They don't claim that. But go ahead. Feel free to debunk the rebuttal when we point out there isn't any drift that they're claiming. The rebuttal has got a rebuttal to the rebuttal, and that's what you want to give. Go ahead.
Well, they're given a value measured in radians. Where do they get their radial value from?
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's so slick. Man, that draws a close to that conclusion so fast. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I like that. That gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling. Thank you, John.
Can
been
you
a good
say that
day.
again?
Yeah, say again.
Well, when we point out that there's no Coriolis observed, they'll say it's a conservation of angular momentum. Well, that's measured in radians. Where do they get their radial value from?
Ah, nice. That's hilarious, man.
You've got to name that. That I was poo-pooing it because it's the rebuttal to a rebuttal that debunks Coriolis, right? So I started off by poo-pooing it. Now I'm going to say that deserves a title, man. That's so good. From Black Swan to Coriolis debunking in one sentence. That's got to be applauded.
I missed it. Can you say it again?
When we point out that there's no Coriolis, they'll say that it's the conservation of angular momentum, which is measured in radians. And I would like to know where they get their radial value from.
Right.
Chocolate, do you want to whisper Black Swan?
Angular momentum. Angular momentum requires a radius. Brilliant. Very quick.
How come you didn't think of that, Nathan?
I think you'll find I did. It's copywritten Nathan Oakley 2020, I believe. Thank you for reminding me, John, of my excellent idea. Now, of course,
what?
Because obviously John is brilliant. That's why. Why didn't you think of it, Neil?
I'm learning from you.
Don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just one man.
And QE and John, you guys are really smart. I learned a lot.
Nah, it's all secondhand from me. So don't put me on a pedestal. Disseminating secondhand information I've learned. That's my talent. Doesn't mean I'm smart.
You're smart.
Not at all. I used to get it when I was a rep. I'd be selling something and I'd know everything about the product inside out, back to front. And if it was electrical, I'd know all the electrical information about it, to the point where somebody who was technically inclined could ask me a question and I could answer it. And they go, well, obviously you're a technician. And I go, no. I failed miserably because I'm colourblind. I kept blowing things up. So, no, I'm definitely not in any way electrically, geared. But it doesn't mean I can't recite something that someone's told me and explain 10 times. Well, doesn't make me a technician.
Yeah, but that's a talent in itself.
Salesman. That's what it is. Sales.
As long as you're not a greasy used car salesman like, what's his name, Chocolate?
Nothing wrong with a used car salesman.
Salesman?
Nothing wrong with used car salesman. Nothing wrong with a used car salesman.
He's the used globe salesman.
Yeah, that's more like it. Any evidence that
He still claims you don't. He still claims that you got the Coriolis all wrong, Nathan. It's hysterical.
Yawn. How interesting. After 4 years of debating it, I'm pretty confident that I know exactly what Coriolis is and how to debunk it. And thanks to John, we've now got a swift debunking of their claim that, no, it's retention of angular momentum. Oh, really? That's measured in radians, right? Where'd you get the radius? Black Swan.
Boy, that Black Swan is a killer, isn't he?
I've been hoping for a really concise demolishment of Coriolis effect in the first instance, John, with Black Swan. Now, that is a demolishment of the rebuttal that comes when you point out that there's nothing drifting. Well, you wouldn't expect to see drift. It's conserving the angular momentum. Where'd you get the radius? Black Swan. Epic.
Well, that was one of the reasons I stayed with the globe so long, is I thought I could measure a radius. And when the Black Swan showed it to be in a non-geometric position, you're not measuring it anymore.
I would have loved to have been there when you converted. Was there a lot of scratching of your head? Like, what's going on here?
Was it a relief or was it stressful?
It was. I would say it was stressful. It was like my brain throwing up.
Neil, have him speak to your son. I think that'd be a good idea.
I was thinking of that. I really was thinking of that.
Sorry. This is down to you, Neil.
You guys were stressed? Man, listen. I felt like I dropped a whole bunch of weight that never existed. Are you kidding me? I was just like, oh, I'm not forced to believe this nonsense anymore. Fantastic.
No asteroids are coming to hit me while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, but there's a downside too, right? Well, no, you're not forced to believe that nonsense. There's going to be plenty of people out there that will want to force you to believe this nonsense.
I'm okay with that. When I made that decision that I'm going to go forth and do what I do, I said, well, obviously there's going to be a lot of people fighting me on this, and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm all right fighting as long as I got truth behind me.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's much
worried about
easier.
It's
people and their
something to
feelings.
do. Like, it's like going into a chess match that you know inevitably you will win because of the ignorance of the other party.
Yeah, but why is that? Because when my brother first mentioned Flat Earth to me, I literally abused him for at least 2 or 3 weeks as I watched video on top of video of Flat Earth and just walked away like, holy cow, the Earth is flat. What's going on here? What is that in us that? Because I abused him. I made fun of him. I laughed at him.
You were taught it. Like,
Okay,
and what I
that's
mean by that is like the media that we consume, like usually they problem solve in a fallacious way. And we pick that up as a society.
right.
Well, and it doesn't, and it really it goes in all directions because, I mean, if you're questioning anyone's paradigm, no matter what it is, the first aspect of it is ridicule. Like, what are you thinking this and that? Because, I mean, I'm not going to say who and what, but I started questioning some things about the thing that's not supposed to be talked about, that's not scientific on the flat earth side. And because I brought that into question, I got ridiculed for it, asking for scientific evidence, asking for certain things. So it really just depends on how hard you've held on to your paradigm and how hard you're willing to either let it go or cling to it. The ridicule will come after that.
And it's stressful if you're aware of that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're aware of that as a society, it's frowned upon to believe the Earth is flat. Now, I'm using their words because that's the position that I'm taking when I describe this transition from John's example of being a globehead, relying on R and knowing that that's something dependable that you've always got, to, oh my God, it's not. Well, if you're acutely aware that people who are flat earthers, maybe by you, if you kneel, are ridiculed because you've done it, then you're going to think, well, crap, I've now got to try and appeal to all these people who are out there that were just like me 25 seconds ago that would literally ridicule this nonsense because it isn't nonsense, it's actually the truth. But that doesn't change the people around me who still think as I did 45 seconds ago.
Yeah, but it's so weird because I brought everything at him. I was like, NASA and all of these people are lying. Like, everything we hear, I threw at him. Like, I'm surprised he stood so calm.
Was it stressful because the ridicule you thought you'd receive, John, or was it more that just the paradigm shift is just cognitively stressful to change paradigm on the spot when you realise you haven't got R? Or is it, like I say, the ridicule that you knew you'd get as a result?
Well, I think a lot of my imagination and the things that I loved was tied up in the globe. You know, I was a space nerd. I love space. I love everything about it. And it's not real, you know. It's not easy.
And I feel that, but I wonder, like, is it hard? Is it hard for people because they hold onto it in their imagination that much? Like, they put themselves in space all the time in their brain. Because I just felt like this is a cool story, great, right? But I don't have to hold on to this as my reality. Are you kidding me? Like, why would I get stressed out and then start attacking a group of people who are like, hey, how about I trust what my senses tell me about the earth that I live on, as opposed to trusting some stories some guy in a white lab coat told me?
Well, it's kind of analogous. It's not actually like, but it would be analogous to like waking up one day and realizing you're a brain in a jar.
Oh,
is what
God.
it felt like.
Is that really the note I'm going to have to end this live show on? Yes, it is. Thank you very much, John. You did so well until that point. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you for smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, or becoming a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
The things you held dear and thought establish your points of views. And when you threw those tools at him, you found out it was plastic, and he had the real tools.
Yeah, but once I came to the realization of it, I mean, I didn't fight against it like these Globers are.
Well, that's because
once I was like, oh shoot, it is flat.
That's the whole point I'm making. You had plastic tools riddled in fallacies. He had real tools, and you can deny the truth.
That's one of the reasons I feel like intellectual honesty is far more of a sign of intelligence rather than just being able to regurgitate facts or supposed facts. You know?
Well, for me, I didn't have a lot to hang on to.
Sorry, man.
Because all I had to hang on to was like, this picture of space itself, like all of the lights and just basically what we see when we look up in the sky. It's like, oh yeah, that's space. But when it came to like Vsauce videos and all these other concepts, like it never made sense to me. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Another word for interesting is I really don't understand how that logically follows. So I never had a working idea. So when it was challenged, it came right down.
And it's not even like the people who tell you they go to this place. This is their office, right? This is where they're working. They don't even show you what it is that we see from here. I mean, it was preposterous to me growing up how every NASA footage, none of them have stars in them. Are you kidding me? And it's always an excuse as to why there are no stars. But you should just go up there and it should just look like how it looks. Why is there an excuse? Why are you bringing golf carts and freaking dune buggies, but you're not bringing the type of camera that you're supposed? I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. And even as a normie, I was just like, nah, there's something really just off about all of this crap.
Don't
I'm
forget the
sorry.
magic tricks they did in NASA, showing you a feather and a hammer falling at the same rate. All of those so-called experiments they were doing on the moon.
I told you the story of the guy I met at the restaurant that said, you're the guy that believes the earth is flat, right? That's how he greeted me, because I hadn't seen him for a while.
Right.
It's then in my response after saying hello and sitting down with him, I go, so you're the guy that believes, and I listed all the globe lies, like, axial rotation, gravity, basically the housekeeping questions. And he was dumbfounded because that's what he believes, but he can't defend it.
Go on, Eli.
I pull out the black swan and I ask them, do I need to believe that this horizon is where it is? They look at me like, well, but what do you mean? I don't get that. Well, according to your globe math, this horizon is not where it's supposed to be. But do I need to believe that? Or can I just look at this and say, hey, that's what it is? And even further than that, I can get on a plane and go to this exact beach and do the same thing if I wanted to. You can't do that with space. So who has a belief? And that's when I usually get a dirty look or something. Like, yep, I've done my job. Thanks.
Yeah, you can't verify anything.
Speaking of space and these things, right? So As far as the star thing is concerned, uh, I don't know if it's Jay Tolan, but someone sent a high altitude balloon up, and it was like a 3 hour long video. But the point is, they sent it up at night, and so there was like stars everywhere. So as far as we're concerned, as far as we can go up and observe, the stars are there where they're at night. So this assertion that, oh, when you go up into space where no one can verify and say, oh yeah, there's no stars because of XYZ, that's a bunch of bullshit.
No, it's Dwayne Callum. I think did that one because I always like that one where he shows the stars at night. It was Dwayne Callum. Shout out YouTube guy.
Kellum, yeah, that sounds more accurate.
Hey, anybody
Do any of
see
you-
Mick Jagger's video?
Whose video?
Mick Jagger.
Yeah, it says the Earth is flat and cold.
Yeah. It was a pretty good music video, even.
It's not bad.
Like,
It's
the whole song was pretty impressive.
Dave Grohl,
Wait,
innit?
wait. Who said that? Mick Jagger?
Yeah,
Mick Jagger and Dave
made a new
Grohl.
song.
Yeah,
No way.
yeah. DITRH and Russian Vids both put the video out. So if you check it out on either Dearth or Russian Vids channel, you can see the clip. But yeah, it's just part of his lyrics. The Earth is flat and cold.
Right? The whole
Depends on where
song
you
is on
are on
YouTube.
planet Earth.
The whole song is on YouTube, so
It's not cold in Guyana or in Trinidad. It's hot there.
nah, it was I don't know why cold. Maybe it was a reference to cold hearted or something, or
I think that has to be it.
right. It was the Flat Earth was just a part of the song. It was also about just the COVID nonsense and Bill Gates and all kinds of things, right? And Flat Earth was in there as well.
I've been saying it from the beginning. Flat Earth is at the center of it. All of this stuff going on. Flat Earth.
Think about someone like Jagger, right? Some old rocker. He's not in danger of getting cancelled on social media. Now, if you're an established star or an up-and-comer, you're not going to want to jeopardize your current career or your potential career by talking about this sort of stuff. So they don't. Jagger, on the other hand, he doesn't give a shit. Is his legacy going to get ruined because people go, "Hey, you're a flat earther"?
They might come see him.
But he can do it because his shtick is really the rebellion.
No,
So
he get a visit from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Uh-oh.
Yeah, that would be an interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting if that happens. Because he's done it twice already, hasn't he? He visited Katy Perry. Who was the other one he visited recently? Just decided to turn up on their doorstep because they said that, oh, well, what's all this flat earth stuff then? Neil deGrasse Tyson suddenly appears like a fucking genie.
She asked him if math was science. Like, people say she's dumb and all this and all that. I think she asked him the best questions she could possibly ask.
She needs to keep up to date with the flat earth debate if she wants to be enlightened.
Who are you talking about?
Katy Perry.
Oh, do we care? Other than it's deGrasse Tyson related and the celebrities stop by on? Is Katy Perry interesting suddenly? Clearly not.
I'm just answering Elijah.
Hey, Neil, I just reposted the original song in Master B. If you want to take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, shout out to Jagger and Grohl. Cool, very cool.
And it was a good song, man. I listened to it like 5 times in a row. It really rocks. So
Can't
good
go wrong,
song.
right? Jagger and Grohl? How could that be bad?
Maybe
until
the
they have
next
to
song
apologize.
will be on refraction.
Mick Jagger did a song about what?
the bit that I saw that was snipped out by Russian vids, he was talking about Bill Gates and conspiracies, vaccines, and flat Earth. So, unfortunately, it's tied to a whole load of crap that I wouldn't want it tied to, but it's a song, right?
Yeah, but if you remember when it first came out, The Unspeakable, what they were saying, we need to flatten the curve. We need to flatten the curve. Well, we are flattening the curve. There is no curve.
Yeah.
Funny
how
thing about
ironic.
that is too that they also use this term called the R value, and it has to do with coronavirus as well. Like they always talk about the R value.
Yeah, and it was called a black swan initially.
Wow.
The virus?
Yeah, the economic situation as a result of COVID was called a black swan.
A black swan event, you mean?
Yep, that's correct. It was called a black swan event.
Nathan,
Right.
can I ask you a flat Earth question?
I might not be able to answer, but you can go ahead.
I know usually you like debunk globe Earth. I'm not really a globe Earth, but I do have some problems with a lot of the main flat Earth model, which are kind of
too.
put out there.
Go ahead. Me too. I like
I
you
hear
already.
you. Sorry.
Said I like you already. Yes, I have lots of issues with flat Earth models. Also, go ahead.
So, an argument I hear you make a lot when you're debunking the sphere Earth is that you can't have gas pressure without a container. Would you say that's a fair representation?
The true statement, regardless of debunking a globe.
Yeah. So would
That's
that
not
be a
model
belief
based,
you hold?
really.
Sorry, Owen Rumpus, do you
But
say again?
the thing with, like, so say we have like a hemispherical, like a common thing I see with flat Earth is this kind of hemispherical model, right? Assuming we do have gas pressure within this kind of hemisphere, right? Wouldn't there be like gas? Wouldn't there be a pressure differential between what's inside the hemisphere and what's outside of the hemisphere?
I don't know.
No, there would be.
I don't know.
Gradients form naturally.
Right. The first part of your statement is true regardless. So the first part, if we have gas pressure, yes, we do have gas pressure. But then beyond that, the assumption of hemispherical containment. Justice, can you pop yourself on mute, please? Justice, thank you. Regardless of your assumptions of what is the containment, that I would never dare to assert because I don't know. I know we must have it, but I don't know what it is. So I can't therefore assume A, what the containment is, or B, what's beyond it. But you're asking me to do both. The only bit I can agree with is if we have gas pressure, well, we definitely do. Sorry.
The only point I'd make in terms of would it be an equivalent pressure to the other side is, well, if it was, what would be the point in the containment? But to try and guess, you don't even know what the containment is, never mind what's the other side of the containment. So it would just seem licking your finger, innit?
The other side of the containment is God's throne.
You don't know that, right?
Is that a claim?
Hold on. Before we all start speculating,
Oh,
hello.
I know that.
Hold on. Right, does that answer your question, or was there anything you wanted to follow up on? I was talking to you now. I'm really sorry.
Sorry, I'm new here. The first time I've been here. So it's Justice is the name I have on here. So you're stating that we don't know the nature of the container, just that it is a container.
We must have containment to have gas pressure. It's an antecedent-consequent relationship. So I can assert that we must have containment because we're breathing. But, as you've correctly identified or summarised, we don't know what that is.
We just know that it must provide a limitation to the volume in which gas can move.
Correct.
But doesn't a container have to have certain properties, such as being solid?
Yes, it does. You can make
Well,
lots
that's
of.
if you
Hold on,
assume
hold
it's a
on.
physical container.
Hold on, Arwin. I can see where you're going with this, or I'm going to guess where you're going with this. You can make a whole bunch of logical inferences from that. You can. And so do I, personally. Do I ever air them? No. Because I don't know. But I can make lots and lots of logical inferences about what the containment must be. But I can't prove any of it. Now, it would logically follow that it's those things, and you can infer that it's those things. In the same way, I can infer through logic that we must have containment. And it's demonstrable because you can't show otherwise. Now, if someone shows otherwise, I'll obviously eat my words, and the second law will no longer apply. But as it stands, it does, and therefore we must have containment. That is still a logical inference, but it doesn't mean I know what the containment is. Hope that is good enough. If there's any more, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one more. What did you say, Arwen? If we assume it's physical containment, can you show a non-physical container?
Yeah, the question was because
No,
my
to
physics.
Arwen. Arwen, thank you. Arwen, can you show a non-physical container for us?
Nope. But if
So
I could
I guess the
somehow
assumption's
reach
safe
this,
that it has to
can
be a
I
physical
finish?
container, right?
If I could reach where the limit is, then I could try to figure out whether it is physical or whether it is, as I conceived it, which is fictional at this point, simply a limit of space after which material
So a
cannot move
fictional
any
container
further.
now.
Yeah, special pleading.
It is. I agree.
Okay.
Sometimes just no is cool.
Just wanted to square that up. Go ahead, Justice.
You didn't even get a chance to. I want to bash about. You say non-physical container. Now, if I've got, wait for it, 2 containers. No, I'm only joking.
No, but I
The
repeal
container-
with my special pleading fallacy as an option, as a potential option that could
Yes, there's
be
lots of
tested.
potential special pleading fallacy options. Thank you.
Yeah,
Arwen.
but I do this also because of other things that are really confusing, namely the sun, the nature of the sun, and that I
not
basically
special pleading,
presume
it's
that it's not
non-sequitur.
physical in nature. Well,
Can we get back to the
we can demonstrate that here in the world, right? Because we, mankind, can only make light with physical things, right? Yet there's this thing out there that everybody sees that seems to completely defy this. So if that is the case, then maybe there are other strange exceptions. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you called it, John, non sequitur.
Yep.
Go on, Eric, and then whoever it was that we were actually started this conversation with, Justice. Eric, go ahead.
So I have another question to do with this container.
Go ahead.
Do you claim to know that there is something beyond it, or you don't claim? So you don't claim to know that there's anything beyond the container?
I don't claim, no.
Who are you asking?
Nathan.
Oh, good.
I
No,
said God's throne.
No, I don't. I can make logical inferences, and believe me, there'll be a barrage of people who want to fall over themselves to make claims about what it is, as is happening right now. No, I do not.
Exactly.
The outer layer. It's the outer
Not yet,
layer.
Nathan.
Before you all fall over yourselves to give your barrage of special pleading fallacies, non sequitur fallacies, and biblical text examples, is there any other questions? Justice.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Would it be against the law of physics and thermodynamics as we know it to claim that at this containment, or wherever this container is, beyond it there is nothing?
You mean a vacuum, or literally no more space for physical matter to be present in?
Sorry, how did you preface the question? Is it beyond physics to claim that there's nothing beyond the containment? Is that your question?
Yes, sorry for using nothing here.
No, I get what you mean.
As in,
I don't know I don't understand the framework of your question, because you're asking how it's beyond physics to assert it. So I don't. Maybe you can pad that out a bit because I don't understand what you mean.
Well, if we're talking about a container here, right, then wherever that container is, I'm not assuming I know how far it is or what it's made of, except if we're going to apply the laws of physics, it's probably a solid, right, as far as we know. Wouldn't the laws of physics have to kind of stop outside of that container? Because if you don't assume that the laws of physics stop at the container, then you're going to have a kind of infinite regress problem.
No,
it would seem akin to the same issue that the heliocentric model. What's of this ever-expanding universe? What's on the other side of that expansion? It's a kind of a similar question that's not answerable, is it? You can postulate it in modern physics, but it's a, for me, it's a barrier designed by God to containers. So whether there is or there isn't something the other side, we're not intended to go there anyway. Would be my only conclusion.
Technically, there. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
No, I'm done, Tom.
I thought you were done. Technically, the laws of physics aren't laws of physics; they're natural laws. So, just a technical point.
No, I would speculate that no, that the laws of physics or the laws of nature would apply, regardless. If there's containment beyond the containment, I don't think the laws would break down. But I'm just speculating. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd speculate that they don't have to apply because they're not in the physical world necessarily. You don't know that outside of that dome is classified as physics anymore. Might not have been set up by God to.
I see what you're saying.
Like that.
Okay, that's a good point to end on. Hold on. Did you understand what Adam just said? What's your name again? Where are you?
Could Adam repeat it again, please? Just so I'm sure of what he said.
We're talking about natural laws and laws of physics. Well, yeah, they apply here where we know where they are. And from my perspective, with regards to a creator, I know that he set those laws up here. Physics works here in the physical realm. What's to suggest that outside of this containment is a physical realm? I mean, spiritually, it's a spiritual realm, from my understanding. So, not necessarily would the laws of physics have to apply.
Natural law, not laws of physics.
Okay.
So, well, law, or even natural law, or any of the derived physics. It's right. Not
or physics.
Let me just summarize Adam's point for him. Hold on a second.
Well,
just let me summarize. Bear with me a second. He's saying that we're talking about natural laws, therefore the laws of the nature we experience, and beyond the nature we experience, that's suddenly beyond nature, or to put another title to it, supernatural. Well, we don't know what the laws of the supernatural, if that's what we're gonna, in this instance, Adam is clarifying that beyond the physical, that's what we're describing with the physics or the natural laws of nature, but that's beyond those limitations, therefore no, is Adam's answer.
Well, I mean, could we? I think about it like this: like, imagine, we lived in the ocean and we never experienced, air. Like, could we then? Like, how could we imagine a plane at all, flying through air at all, if we've never experienced it, never seen
We're
it?
not fish. We have a brain.
No, but what I'm saying is it's a different medium entirely. So how do we know how the laws work in the medium that we don't know what is?
We don't. That's Adam's point. It's beyond nature or supernatural.
We're not as cool as fish, because fish some of them could actually jump out of their natural medium into the air and go right back into their medium. So they can experience it, even for a brief second, but they can experience it. We can't jump through the container or whatever the hell it is.
I had Oscars that jumped out of my tank and grabbed goldfish right out of my hands.
Some of them
They would
crawled
jump
on
out
land.
at least maybe 8 inches.
Some of them crawled on land and developed lungs and then eventually, over millennia, they stood upright.
Oh
and...
no!
For fish that are
Fish
bound
claw
in
shrimp
water
people?
and never step on land, and will never know land, is land supernatural to them?
Yeah.
Nathan, there are
Hold on,
lungfish,
hold
right?
on,
Or is
guys. Got a
land
good
still
question.
nature?
It's got a good question. I'm going to say yes in the context that's just been described by Adam. Yeah, to fish, we're supernatural. Yes.
Awesome.
Sounds like a
awesome.
conversation for
I'd say no.
Professor Poisson.
Hold on, Adam's saying no.
No.
Hold on.
It can
No,
confound
Adam.
with
Hello?
the other
It's Adam's...
definition for supernatural. I don't like it.
Adam's saying no, so if Adam can give clarity, because I'm speaking on his behalf, which is a bit wrong. But go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
I would say no. That is still the fish out of water is still the physical world. It's a part of physics that they've not experienced, but it still exists within the physics, and everything still fits within natural law. When we're talking outside of this, I'm talking about that the rules of physics, the natural laws don't even have to exist. It doesn't have to be relevant. Matter doesn't have to exist. We're talking about the supernatural to me as we step out of the realm that we've been given to experience the physical in.
But maybe we just don't have enough
I don't
evidence
know.
or information to conclude that it is supernatural, as opposed to just part of the natural laws that we just don't have experience with. For instance, a fish doesn't know that, like, they would sink and not float in air and stuff. They don't have that experience, right? If they have no information of air and land and stuff, right? But really, it's all part of relative density. It's the same system, right?
What?
Right.
So maybe the same applies to the skies, and we just
physical.
don't have information.
Yeah? I'm saying you can't say that once you got the other side of the containment that the laws of physics would apply. It's assumptive to say that you're going to step into a realm where the same laws of physics and natural law apply, when it's clearly designated within creation as for a different function, hence the containment purpose. Yeah, so it would be assumptive.
That's why I said maybe.
That if I went
but it's also assumptive to assume that it's going to be supernatural.
Why are you rumpusing Adam?
Well, I get where percentage is going, because it's kind of indirectly assumptive to say that they don't work. Like when we don't have the information to say either or.
Yeah, the truth is we have an indeterminate amount of information.
You can draw logical inference all day long, but the bottom line is we just don't know. So we can philosophize all day about what might or might not be, and what is reasonable to assume about an area we have no experience about. So that was something you said, well, we've got limited evidence about that. Well, we've got none. And what is presented as evidence is all deception. So we don't have anything. Beyond some deception from people like NASA, we know absolutely nothing about that region.
The original question, Nathan, was, do the laws apply there? So I think we've answered it honestly, and it is, they might do, they might not do, it might have absolutely nothing to do with those laws out there. But the honest answer is you haven't got a clue.
Right, we just don't know. And just kudos to Justice. Is it Justice Stone? Your insightful question has developed this conversation, so props to you.
Natural laws have been developed, been discovered based on our experience within the container or realm. So we have no experience with any other container, right? We don't know how to get there, if there is any at all. So natural laws apply to where it has been figured out to be natural law, which is here.
Maybe people live on a sphere on the other side.
That's funny.
I don't know why that's
sorry.
funny. It is funny.
Yeah, that's because he lost his Snell's law of refraction.
Hold on, just let me wrap my head around how that would work. So what you're saying potentially in this argument, it just suddenly spins into a globehead's way of retaining some heliocentrism when they've come to flat Earth. That's what it sounds like when you spin it like that. So you look up at the celestial bodies and go, right, okay, obviously we're on a flat plane. Obviously there's a container, and I'm going to infer logically that it's a big dome. But beyond that, there's space and there's planets.
Can I ask, since Quantum Eraser is here, can I ask him a philosophy of science question?
He can answer for himself. Go ahead, QE.
Make sure he had his
Go ahead.
breakfast.
No, I haven't had breakfast yet. Go ahead.
So I'm one of my so I watch your a lot of your science videos like Beyond Flat Earth, and I think Quantum Eraser's videos, especially on the scientific method, I think are some of the best videos, and they're very hard to find. It's very hard to find that type of philosophy of science on YouTube. So just props to you for that, because I really enjoyed a lot of the videos you have on that topic. What do you think of? I know you've spoken about how you need a independent variable, a dependent variable, a valid hypothesis, and so on. What about control variables, right? What is the right amount of control variables to make a experiment valid?
Controls are constants. It depends on what the experiment actually is. So there's no one set of controls or constant. Depends on what your experiment is.
Sorry, I should be more specific. How would you define a control variable in a scientific experiment?
Something that's not varied, it's held constant.
If we were proving the boiling point of water, yeah, then we would keep the air pressure constant as we did this. So that would be a control variable. We wouldn't want varying air pressures because that could affect the boiling point, wouldn't it? But we're not testing for the effect of air pressure, but we know it does have an effect, so we keep that one constant. As John says, but it's very specific to what you're inquiring about, isn't it? At what other things could affect it, and you need to therefore mitigate within the experiment to ensure they're constant and don't vary. But that is specific
I would also
to each
add.
experiment.
Oh, sorry.
What's the independent variable there?
Hold on. Go ahead, percent, and then.
I would also add. Theoretically, controls are supposed to be, truly constant, right? They're not supposed to change at all. And so theoretically, you could have as many as you want, as long as you're keeping them as controls. But technically, in actuality, these controls all have margins of error, and so I think ideally you would try to limit them to as few as possible, limit the variables.
Well, there's a part of the statement that QE normally states when he's doing his presentation. He just didn't say it in this instance, which is it's a variable which is held constant to not affect the test. So while you're right, yes, they can have a margin of error. It's more that it's not affecting the test. So if you're going to try and boil water and you stick it on an aeroplane that's ascending, sorry, I can't think of a better example off the top of my head, and you're changing the pressure because it's an open top aeroplane, it's not a pressurized aeroplane. And, the higher you go, the lower the boiling point, right? But are you going to conduct the experiment whilst varying altitude and heat? Well, no, because the point of the experiment is that you have only got one variable that's being tested. So in other words, it's everything that isn't being tested is kept constant so as to not affect the test.
So everything which isn't being tested. Oh,
Yeah, that's correct.
are you getting feedback?
I'm not.
So everything that is not being tested has to remain the same.
Correct.
Well, you got three variables in your experiment, man. You got the independent, that's the one you're going to manipulate. Then you got the one that's going to be affected, right? That's your dependent. And then we just talked about the control, right?
Maybe it'll help if I give them their other name. They also get known as, or described as constant variables, which sounds a bit counterintuitive. But something that could vary but is kept constant. So a constant variable.
what if you change? What if you do the experiment and then you determine the independent variable, and then you do the experiment again, and then you change the constant into the independent, and the experiment changes.
Yeah, that's possible. And
that's also
Would that
necessary.
become the new Ivy?
yes,
That's correct. Then you'd hold the in water being boiled, for example, you'd hold the water temperature constant, with heat being a control variable, and then you'd vary the altitude to show that the boiling point drops. So you've got a different independent variable, but then you've got a different experiment. It's not the same experiment anymore.
So the effect would be the dV would change, or
no, listen. The best example of this would be the theory on plant growth, right? What does it take for a plant to grow? Because you're going for a theory here. Remember what a scientific theory is, right? It's a hypothesis or group of related hypotheses which has been confirmed through repeated experimental tests, right? So plant growth, what does plants need to grow, right? There's a number of things, isn't there? We can talk about nutrients, we can talk about water, sunlight, pH. There's a number of things, right? So what you do is you hold each of those constant and then use the independent variable in a single scientific hypothesis with all the other ones held constant, and then you test your IV. Follow? And then you put that one as a constant, then you change another one, like water or nutrients. Get it?
But there's always going to be a specific thing or reason that you're doing this, and it's a phenomena that's occurred. So, for instance, in this example, there's a particular deficiency in a plant, and you want to figure out why. So you start holding things constant and varying things that are affecting the plant's growth to see if that's when deprived of it, it has the effect that you're observing, and therefore you validate the cause of the effect. An example would be something like scurvy. So yes, there's plenty of other things that can kill people. So therefore, lack of vitamin C isn't the cause of death. It doesn't work like that. But when you're testing, you've got to keep everything else constant and vary a single thing to establish if that causes the effect that you're trying to study. And once you've established that, there are going to be other things that can also speed up or slow down the process, but ultimately the cause of the effect is going to remain the same for that specific experiment, only that specific experiment. And as John's already pointed out, you're working towards a scientific theory. That would be a group of experiments around a given phenomena that you've studied, or a particular process like plant growth. That's a phenomena. Something's happening. Well, there's no single cause of plant growth, is there? So therefore, you're going to be establishing lots of different causes of lots of different effects, deficiencies or things that can cause it to grow better, but you're only going to do one at a time. That's the point. Now, when it comes down to, this is why we discuss this so much, claims that come from the globe, they'll often have multiple variables, or time as the variable that's being changed, things like that. So knowing that an independent variable is the thing being varied and everything else remains constant is to understand that you've only got one of them, and it's your presumed cause of the effect that's being studied in that particular experiment. And as a group, you might form a theory based on lots of things that have been studied with everything else held constant and different variables changed, to give you a better idea as a whole of something that's more complex than just a single phenomena like boiling water.
Sorry for asking so many philosophical questions,
I
but what's
apologise.
really got me interested.
Don't need to apologise one bit.
Well, can I add one thing before we switch topics?
Didn't know we were changing topics, but go ahead.
I understand testing the IVs one at a time, holding the rest as controls. But what of synergy? Like, the idea that two things can have an effect greater than their individual, amounts. At that point, after you've exhausted doing the IV for the ones, like all individually, wouldn't you try combining them?
Yeah,
you are combining them. You're holding the other ones constant. You're not eliminating the constants.
No, I mean,
but you're talking in a more broad term.
Holding two constants and doing two, for instance, in a separate experiment.
No.
After you've established like plant growth theory, then there wouldn't be any anything wrong with what you just said. No.
But just to expand it out, just to make your example make sense, and it does. If you said malnutrition, right? Well, if you start varying the amount of vitamin C in somebody that's got malnutrition, yeah, they still have the same effect. So you're going to say it's that single thing that's caused it? Well, no, it's a group of lots of things that you haven't got, you know. Well, it's not as simple. You're going to have to do much more expansive studies to figure out the cause of malnutrition if it wasn't patently obvious in the first place. But you know what I'm getting at. You can expand that out into a more broad topic, but you still have the same rules apply to have any empiricism at the end. You've got to hold everything constant and vary one thing.
I would say though that so just to really like hammer down on what you know, on the definitions of these specific things involved with the scientific method, wouldn't we have to perform experiments to know which control variables to control for? So if we didn't know that gas pressure affects the boiling point of water, right, we wouldn't be able to control for it. See what I'm saying?
No, but we may notice then that as we go to different places that water boils at a different temperature, wouldn't we? So we would then use inquiry, some abductive reasoning, hopefully, to come to that conclusion. Hello, these different places are at different altitudes. Is there something different there? Yeah.
Well, what Adam's now hold on. What Adam's now describing is the genius behind the person who comes up with a valid hypothesis that's verified. Now, you've got to apply a certain degree of reasoning, but what you're pointing out is that it's hard, right? So you've got a phenomena and you don't know what's causing it. Where'd you begin? What's your whole constant? Yeah, that's hard, right? And the person that gets it right and establishes an independent variable that does cause the phenomena that you're observing and studying, well, that's a genius right there. That's the genius. Now, people who are actualizing that hypothesis, you can call that person a scientist. Now, in terms of the method, they describe them as the researcher, but you could still definitely have a valid science badge on if you're varying that which is assumed by someone else to cause the effect. So you're varying it and seeing if it affects it, right? Like all the people who repeat the double slit experiment for just the sake of example and expand on it with the delayed choice. Now, not decrying in any way the genius that is the delayed choice quantum eraser, far from it. But what I'm saying is, when you're at the starting point, where do you begin? What do you do? What do you hold constant? What do you vary? And if you get all of those things in a line with a valid null, and then you vary it, normally 9 times out of 10, unless you're further down the road, nothing happens. You just validate the null. Oh, it didn't cause it then. So then you start again. Or you take one of the things that were constant, which could be everything, right? And is everything that isn't what was being varied previously. In other words, the process to get an empirical result at the end is hard. Really hard. Now, just to tag this on the end, this is why I've been smiling the whole time. What's easier? All right, what's that phenomena? We've got a phenomena occurring. Wow, phenomenal. I wonder what caused that. So you go through the process that I've just described, difficult though it may be to establish what it is, formulate all these different hypotheses, put them through the method, validate or invalidate them, validate your null at the end most of the time, right? Isn't it not easier to just take a just so story in place of any experimentation that validates the cause and just claim that that's what's causing it? I mean, I could rattle that off in minutes. It's so easy to just make something up. Now, the problem with just making something up is people might not believe you. But if I say science at the end, and you've been taught at school how difficult it is and how the empirical nature of it advances humanity, and I just come up with a story and then say science at the end, then most people will just believe the story without realizing that none of that difficult process that leads to empiricism at the end has actually been performed. And that's the world we live in. A world of pretender clown pseudoscientists who use the empirical and difficult method that's advanced humanity to grease the skids of their just so stories when they're talking about bloody lights in the sky and sky vacuums. Anyway, that's my rant over. Again, great question.
Another thing I would say
So
about
you're gonna
certain control variables is that, well, you kind of have to empirically, so you have to, in order to control for gas pressure, you have to know that gas pressure affects boiling point of water or a liquid.
Exactly.
But there are some control variables which don't have to be empirically proven prior. Like you don't have to conduct an experiment to know that the diameter of a tube is going to affect the height of a liquid. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and likewise, there's plenty of things that you don't need to worry about holding constant. The number of skunks in the area won't affect the hot spring. In other words, there's plenty you don't need to worry about. But ultimately, there's plenty that you do need to worry about, but probably don't know about. You don't know what you don't know. That's where the genius of it comes in.
And the discovery.
That's why we're told we're too strict. We're too
hard.
strict in our language of science. Pretty funny coming from a bunch of people who claim science until you ask them, where's the science?
And one of the reasons that pressure isn't the cause of the phase change in water is because you can't change the pressure to freeze ice. I've never pushed on water and froze ice. Like, it's affecting your cause. But I've heard people say that pressure can cause water to boil just by itself, and that's wrong.
I think the problem is
It's
that
not wrong.
I think the problem is that in like the science has been redefined, or hasn't been properly defined, especially in like you even see sometimes mistakes in terms of the scientific method being made on university departments. Like you can't even trust a lot of times university departments to perform the scientific method correctly, because when you go and look at their different definitions for the scientific method, a lot of them are incorrect. So it's kind
Say
of
that one more time.
a lot of university departments will. So say you're interested about the scientific method, and you can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, I don't want to just believe just so stories. I don't want to believe in fairy tales. I want to do this whole science thing myself. So you go on the internet and you look up scientific method. If you do that, at least when I've done that, I've found contradictory methods. And so it kind of set me down this road of what actually is the scientific method.
For example,
I think one of them was, I don't know, I think you mentioned it in one of your videos, Quantum Eraser, the University of Berkeley. I'm not sure if it was University of Berkeley. Don't quote me on this.
I mentioned it because the crayon munching numpty dipshits went to the University of Evolution and tried to define science with that. Okay, yeah, that's incorrect.
Is that the? Hold on, is that the science of smiles?
Yes,
I love it. Berkeley, man, wicked. Okay, carry on.
So I got so like engrossed in what is this scientific method thing that I actually went into the archives and I was looking for Roger Bacon's original manuscripts and stuff, because a lot of the things on different like on Google Images and on different websites, they were just so contradictory, or one had more steps than the other. One had preliminary research whilst the other didn't. One said like kind of formulate a hypothesis, and
did you watch my science presentations? Then you wouldn't be asking this question. Remember when I said there's many steps to the scientific method, but there are 3 indispensable ones. What are the 3 indispensable steps of the scientific method?
The 3 indispensable ones are formulating a logically valid hypothesis, having an independent variable,
Skip one.
to which you can vary, and having a dependent variable which you can measure, and obviously having control variables, as many as we discussed before.
Nope. Close.
Close.
You got to
Not bad.
start somewhere.
Not bad. Not bad. That was close.
It's not bad. It's close. So we're not getting into the weeds. I just asked you a general question. The 3 indispensable steps are: the first step, natural phenomena observed. That's where you get your dependent variable. Second step, hypothesis construction. Of course, it has to be viable. And the third one, experiment. That's it. Thanks.
But,
yeah, sorry, I should have said that.
Can I just speak to his point, though? Because you're saying when you go and do research, you get a lot of contradictory ideas about what science actually is. That's your overriding point. Now, just as a question to you, you may have stumbled across this on one of QE's presentations. Bearing in mind that most of the material is coming from universities, of all the published papers, what sort of percentage do you think have actually gone through the scientific method? As a guess, just guess.
You don't need the scientific method. You have peer review, right? Where a professor comes along and he blesses your paper. He gives it his blessing.
Okay.
And then it's science, isn't it?
Yeah, you're way ahead of me. Yeah, you're way ahead of me. But as a percentage of all that stuff that's out there, as you correctly identify as quote-unquote science, what percentage of that material that's being punted by the universities, taught by the universities to the kids to then pass on to their kids, etc., etc., what percentage do you think have gone through the scientific method? At a guess.
After reading a lot of scientific papers, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the majority. So more than 50%.
More than 50 have gone through the scientific method or have not?
Have not.
How much more than half? Just put a percent on it.
I don't know. I would say 60%.
So if I was to tell you,
my approximation.
I won't steal QE's thunder because he gave me this stat, so I'll allow him. QE.
No, go ahead, man. I'm eating breakfast.
It's less than 1%. Less than 1%.
You kidding me?
Nope. Less than 1% of all of those papers published by, taught by, studied over, funded by, huge amounts of cash, huge amounts of... It doesn't make it invalid, but I'm just saying that none of it's gone through the scientific method. That's the bottom line. It's all called science.
Can I get the stats for that? Where's that? Where that at?
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Wait till I'm done eating breakfast.
Thank you.
You could do it yourself. You don't need the stats for it. Just do it yourself. Go into any of the databases, NCBI or Google Scholar, and just start randomly typing in search terms for scientific papers. Then what you do is you word search hypothesis, independent, dependent, and experiment, and you can validate it yourself. It's not that hard.
And it won't take long. I can just picture the faces of people who do this. I'm glad we got the reaction we did. Because when I heard that stat, I was like, my God, you gotta be joking. Yeah, we live in a pseudoscience world.
I think legally, if something claims to be a scientific paper, but it doesn't have the prerequisite methodology, which we talked about before, it's not really a scientific paper, is it? It would be akin to like a fraudulent document of some kind.
It's not legally. I don't know about legally. I haven't looked it up in the legal definition. I'll have to ask Anthony to do it in the legal dictionary on my behalf. But it's actually just a linguistic thing. So the definition of pseudoscience is a claim of science that has not been through the scientific method. So that's the definition of pseudoscience. So therefore, if the paper comes out and claims to be science and it hasn't been through those methods. Now, that's not to say that there's many peer-reviewed papers and studies that are perfectly legitimate and do not claim they're science. They might be under the overall banner and you could throw them under the bus, but that's not necessary. It's purely when someone's actually saying, this is my science for this. You go, oh, okay. Well, then you're opening yourself up to have it, like whatever the control V is or whatever, to do a search on these paper and look for independent variable, dependent variable, experiment, hypothesis, few search terms, and you'll come up a blank every single time.
Well, you could get busted. He's correct, because if you would say that scientific evidence, that phrase, because that's defined in law, right? You must have a tested hypothesis for it to be scientific evidence, according to the log dictionary, unless they deleted it. I still have it.
No, I
I'll
do
have to
remember
check
you looking
again
it
on
up,
that.
actually. I do remember it now. That's correct. So it's got to have a valid hypothesis. It's got to be experimentally valid for it to be legally defined as science. So, yeah, you're right.
In
It'd be interesting to.
Hold on a second. In 2012, funny you said that, I created a document that charged, and I started naming alleged scientists. There, I had like 60 names on it, right? And then I charged them with fraud, and I sent it to my sister. I said, I want to file a lawsuit. How would you go about doing it? Because I'm no lawyer, right? I don't know anything about law. And she said, "Damn, you got a case." Because I wrote out all the issues. It was too funny. Sorry, but it's right on topic. They're fraudulent.
Yeah, you're right. We have discussed this many times in the past. It's the conclusion we draw when we're talking about people who are debating in the arena and claiming to be of some sort of science background, and we call them frauds. The first one that springs to mind is that that guy that Nathan Thompson accosted, Dr. John
Danny Faulkner.
Danny Faulkner.
Danny Faulkner.
Yes. Yeah. You'd call that guy a fraud.
All right, I'm checking it right now. Nope, the law dictionary. It's still there. Scientific evidence, the testing of a hypothesis or theory that is objective in a controlled environment. Scientific evidence. There you go.
Well, that's an experiment. That's what they mean. Testing.
Oh, drop that too. Drop that.
Just let me just clarify that. The audience might not be aware of some of the language because it's not legalese, but it is legalese. So test is an experiment. So when they're saying test, they mean experiment. Hypothesis is IV, DV, CV. So independent control, dependent variable. So all the steps that QE described earlier, that would be the 3 intrinsic steps, are described in that legal definition. To test, that's an experiment. So you've got to have had an experiment, you've got to have a hypothesis. If you haven't, it's fraud. If you claim it as science, it's just that simple.
Yep.
And that's the world we live in. Hooray! Our world, the very nature of it, is surrounded by fraud. Isn't that wonderful?
By the way, I never filed that lawsuit.
I don't blame you, because it wouldn't end well for you. Yeah, consensus rules, unfortunately. That's the society we live in. We do live in a consensus-based society. I nearly choked when we went on Steve McRae's show, and that was one of the first questions that was asked to them. Do you believe that the reality we experience is governed by consensus? And I remember, I think it was Chris Monk that asked that question. I remember sitting back thinking, well, obviously they're not going to say yes. That's the most ludicrous thing that could ever cross their lips. And in unison, they all said, yes, yes, consensus does dictate our reality. I'm like, what? You're having a laugh? You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, they have no depth. Because what they're actually saying is it's a religion. Because that's what religion deals with, consensus. They don't realize it because they have no depth. There's no knowledge of, they're just parroting. Read something and parrot it. They don't understand it on a fundamental level. Just the basic fundamental level I'm talking about.
But the fact that they would admit to it, for me, that was the end of the debate.
Yep.
Check this out. One of the most important issues that arises in expert testimony is which scientific procedures a court should accept as evidence. Many scientific procedures are not seriously in dispute and are accepted by courts with little or no inquisition into their validity. Examples include fingerprint tests for purposes of identification, blood tests, breathalyzer tests for alcohol consumption, and ballistics tests of bullets and their impact area. These scientific procedures are so widely accepted that a court may take judicial notice of the procedure's validity. Judicial notice means that the parties in the case do not have to present evidence to the court to establish the validity of scientific procedure. In some instances, legislators have specifically authorized the use of scientific tests, such as, yeah, that's irrelevant. But yeah, basically, they don't have to present evidence to show that it's a valid scientific experiment or what.
Well, most of the time you're asking, it's not even science to begin with. That's the biggest problem. Right?
Yeah.
It depends on the question that you're asking. It's
What is
not most of it. It's not natural science to begin with.
A fingerprint's
So
not
you
a
got to go
phenomenon.
back to the actual. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a fingerprint's not a phenomenon, right? So what caused this fingerprint to get here? Right? That's not an establishment of a phenomena. So, like you say, it's not a science question to begin with.
Forensic science, man.
And they'd probably do the same thing with like bunk science, like, you know, carbon dating and stuff. They'll just take judicial notice and not bother with evidence.
Forensic science isn't science. It's a misnomer. There's no hypotheses in forensic science at all. Zero.
You mean just putting the word science after forensic doesn't make it science? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Copy that.
Now, I'm not saying that the procedures and the technical procedures and the things that they do to find evidence aren't valid. I never said that. All I'm saying is it's not natural science. Period. End of story.
It's sleuthing.
And I can quickly debunk it.
It's easier if you use computer science. So forensic science, you can blur the lines much more easily. But if you say computer science, well, no one's going to question that computers work and that they're a real thing that exists, but they're just not science. But if you strap the word on, it just gives it that much more credibility, validity, impact, whatever they're going for when they ascribe this term to their discipline, we'll call it. Well, computing is a discipline. It's not a science. Same goes for fingerprints, but it's much easier to blur the lines with that example.
I think computer science would be a subset of mathematics. I feel. In talking about, it depends on what part of computer science you're talking about. Because if you're talking about, the actual computer itself, the electronic components of the computer, the CPU, the RAM, and the natural sciences are going to be involved there. But again, computer science, some parts of it are just basically, like really in-depth logic and mathematics and philosophy.
Yeah, that's communications. That's what a computer's doing, right? It's all communicating within itself, and you're describing that with the logic. But that's language. So yes, a computer's dealing with language. It's passing on data around its system and giving you an output at the end. Well, that's language. That's not science either. But people will call it computer science because it's very technical. Well, often they'll bracket these things together, science and technology. Well, you can claim fingerprinting is a type of technology if you wish, but it's not science.
Is
Right,
technology
just like the
a
hardware
result
part is
of
engineering.
science?
It can be. Often some great advancements are made by scientific discovery that results in technology that we use. So yes, often technology will follow scientific discovery, but that doesn't make the microwave science.
Talking
So it
about
says here-
microwaves. Sorry.
Go
Talking about mic.
Contract.
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it says here in terms of like the evidence that is not considered like universally accepted, and as such is not judicially noticed as an automatic valid source of scientific evidence, regardless of whether it is science to begin with. Like you guys mentioned forensic science and stuff. For that evidence that isn't that, it's not widely accepted and stuff. They actually run through the motions a little bit more. They're more stringent. It says they may be admitted as evidence, but only after an expert witness has testified to the validity of the test. In determining whether to admit scientific evidence from procedures that are not universally accepted, a court must ask whether the test is reliable. A technique's reliability depends on a number of factors, including whether the technique can be or has been tested, whether it has been subjected to peer review, whether the test procedures have been published, whether the test has a margin of error, and if so, at what rate, and whether the technique as applied conform to existing standards for the test.
That's self-contradictory in legal speak, because you can't have a margin of error with an empirical test. So if you've got a valid scientific piece of evidence, then the outcome that it's providing is an empirical outcome. So there is no margin of error.
Right, it would become statistics then.
Yep, nice pickup. Yep, you got it. Look
Yeah,
at
it'd all
that.
be good if the universally accepted stuff was in fact science. You know, I understand
Yep.
you don't have to like redo all of the motions and show how it's, you know, proven and stuff if it's actually science, but that's the issue.
There's
You
obviously
got to
an
get
overlap.
specific. You got to
Go on, sorry, Q.
go ahead.
I was going to say,
No,
there's
I
no...
was saying you got to. We're just talking generally speaking. I like hyper specificity. So let's just over the next 2,000 shows go through each one and see if it's science.
Good luck with
that. you start off.
Before we do go through every single claim in the papers, what the problem I see here is that as a general societal tool, the word science is misappropriated to give things a greater sense of validity. Now, because of that, there's going to be an assessment on how good is this science, which in itself makes no sense. But if you've got a legitimate way of measuring something for the sake of argument, and I've seen this in audio, people do it all the time, because they've got a very good piece of measuring equipment, you know, a Hewlett-Packard measuring tool that costs 25 grand, and they can measure something on it, they can say, my measurement is accurate, and I know it is for all these reasons. But just saying that isn't enough. So I'm going to say my measurement is scientifically accurate. Now, they don't realise when they say that, because it's societal, that technically someone like me can come along and completely invalidate your claim as a pseudo-science claim, even though it's perfectly true to assert your measurement as being accurate. It is. You've measured it. You've given me justifiable reason to believe that the testing equipment has been set up correctly. Therefore, I will accept your measurement until you call it science. Now, that is unfortunate for those people who didn't realise that when they said their measurements were science, that opened them up to have us persecute them for their mistake, their error. And I'm sure in those instances, people would say, okay, it's not science, but it's still absolutely true. You go, yeah. So go forth and declare it as so. True by way of measurement, not true by way of science. And if you're unfortunate to be caught in the crossfire, and there will be crossfire in this regard with people with legitimate, justifiable research, measurements, whatever it may be, that have been unfortunate enough to fall into the trap of calling it science and then get called out on it, they will just rephrase what they've said. Maybe even apologise. Oh, right, that was a mistake on my part. Doesn't mean what I said wasn't true. Here's how it's true. And people will assess it on its merits just exactly the same as they did before, because that's the standard, it seems, at least in legal terms, people will give to measurements or sleuthing, and that's perfectly legitimate. But all of those things have been bracketed as science, whether they're legit or not, which is very great if you're the swindler that's using it to claim something in the sky is science, because you've absolutely got no legitimate reason to claim it. So you're the furthest away from the science. But the people who've got actual measurements of stuff who've called it science, well, tough luck. You know what you're saying. Words have meanings. And if you're going to invalidate a perfectly good measurement because you've called it science, more fool you. You won't get much sympathy from me. And unfortunately, for there to be any change, we've got to start being hyper-specific, as QE says. There's no point going, well, they can kind of call that science because it's a really good measurement, so we'll let them off. No, that's not how it works. Now, I had this baptism of fire with Dr. John Dee. Now, absolutely accredited in his field. A lot of his assertions are not science. He was, back then, several years ago now, calling them science. Now, he's a fully credited PhD. I'm a grunt by comparison. And I'm telling him, no, you're not going to call this science. No, it's not still a little bit science. I'm sorry. I'm not having it. You're not going to get away with it because you've got a PhD. And after a bit of massaging from me, and a few stronger words in our language between our emails, he eventually conceded. But he was one of those people. He's caught in the crossfire. What he's showing and presenting and testing and measuring aren't scientific tests. But does that mean that he's got less magic? Unfortunately, yes. Because it's being used in the same way as everyone else uses it to give more credibility to a perfectly legitimate measurement. Well, that doesn't mean it's science, and it doesn't mean you can get away with using the magic trick either. Go ahead, whoever that was.
I have a question.
Good.
You kept saying measurement. Is science qualitative or quantitative?
Qualitative.
Oh.
Yep.
So not measuring.
No.
Right. Thanks.
Well, some people could get around that. It just depends. Hold on, there's some nuance here. It either is the cause of the effect or it isn't. Sometimes, depending on what the effect is, you may need to measure that effect to tell if there was an effect that the IV caused. That doesn't make the entire hypothesis quantitative. Follow?
Yeah, I understand. In other words, when you're taking a measurement, you're measuring whether or not the effect occurs. So there is a measurement of the effect, and if it occurred, you're taking a measurement that it occurred. So yeah, you're right.
Right, like
Yes,
heat
there's a nuance
increases
there.
gas pressure.
There's a
You're gonna
nuance
have to
there.
measure the quantity of the pressure in order to establish the difference.
Somebody said it, or I think Percentage just said it. How'd you say that, Percentage?
I said you're quantifying the quality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's very well put. Yeah. You can ascribe how much something happens once you've figured out that it happens. But if it's not happening, how much it's not happening is irrelevant. And if you've got the wrong thing ascribed to what's causing the effect, and start mathsing that and saying, well, look, I can do the maths for it, is irrelevant also, because you haven't actually got the quantitative value following the qualitative value. And the qualitative value is the thing that you're trying to establish as the IV. You're trying to find out the cause of the effect. Now, yeah, you'll measure that it affects it if it measures because it's been affected by it. So you've got to have that actual cause the effect to measure something in quotes.
You guys are getting scary, man. I could almost step down right now and just let you guys run with the ball.
I think what might have happened with this kind of redefining or sloppy use, I don't know whether it's just, it was a case of it being term science just slowly, being misappropriated, or whether it was more of a, top-down decision of redefining what science is. Because there are a number of philosophical movements which claim that there is no, reality, and you can never attain truth, whatever that is. And so if you have this belief that there is no reality and that truth is completely subjective and so on, wouldn't you kind of just appropriate science you wouldn't mind, because if you don't believe that the truth can be attained or that there is no reality, wouldn't it follow that you don't really care about science and how it's defined?
Be careful.
How did they establish that statement's even
hold
true?
on a second.
It's philosophy.
Hold on a second. He's using the term the science, right? You're equivocating. We're talking about natural science here. Science just means knowledge. So be hyper specific. I should have done it, in the beginning, but I didn't do it. But now I keep on saying natural science, trying to get people to, okay, because science, that opens up a whole big door, right? We're not talking about that door. We're talking about a specific chunk of that door. Natural science, right? The genre that we're in. Correct? Follow?
Hold on, John.
And Stern, I think you're overthinking it a little bit.
Can somebody hear me?
Yeah.
Can somebody hear me? All right.
Go ahead.
I thought that science meant science and knowledge meant knowledge. Since when are they interchangeable? I thought that just science is science, knowledge is knowledge. The entire use of science is all cultural programming. It's a top-down decision not to be stopped, because I bet that when this first started to happen in media, actual scientists were obviously objective, right? But they went for it anyway.
Eli,
So it's
No,
just
not right.
cultural
No,
influence.
no.
God, Eli, you're causing chaos.
Oh,
Did I
tell
get through?
Eli I dropped those citations in live stream.
Let me use it
So
bad.
no.
Did I
Piss right
get
in the wall.
So no. If you define science, it's defined
Hello?
just the term science. It's just knowledge. That's it. But natural science, that's a whole different ballgame.
And to Stern,
Yeah, we heard you,
again,
Arlen. We heard you.
I said that
that's
He
great.
was responding to you, yes.
Thank you, G+. Go ahead, percent.
Yeah, I was saying, I think he's overthinking it a little bit. The reason they call it science when it's not science is simply greed and corruption, and they just want to cut corners. It's like if I was a mechanic and I just didn't said that this vehicle passed its MOT or something without actually testing it out. It's just laziness and wanting to cut corners. You could call it bottom up if you want, but it's as simple as that. It's human nature to take advantage when checks aren't in place and when there's no oversight, and that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it's but the question of why is almost impossible to answer. Like we can ascertain that they're not performing the method properly. Why they're doing it is
because they benefit from it.
Then
Well, here's the
who
thing
knows
for me.
why?
So you
Can't know
mentioned
why.
the word. You mentioned the word truth, right? Like a universal truth. I don't know about that, but the scientific method for me is just saying, okay, this person says that this is happening in an experimental setup. Like it's like, okay, is that true? All I need to do is verify that what they're saying is actually happening. So when it comes to these people that are saying, oh, well, science of this and that and the third, it's like, well, okay, I don't care what you call it or how you feel about it. How am I to know that what you're saying is true? How am I to know that?
Also, we do
Don't
know why
think-
they do it. That's right, but we do know why they hijack the term. And it's because it's a stamp of approval that might as well have the word valid written on it. You just stamp the word science on it, and people instinctively think that's true, valid. Fingerprints. So we've got a fingerprint. He was definitely there then. She was definitely at the scene of the crime because we've got her fingerprints there. So science, well, that makes sense because it's absolutely empirical. So when you say, well, to cut corners, well, cut what corner? Well, the corner between actually having the proof that you claim is true and not having it. Well, if you haven't got it, it's just so much quicker and easier to stamp science on it and say, there you go,
Exactly.
valid, empirical. So it's a magic word. Now, I don't qualify.
And then add on to the fact
Go on.
that they're getting paid grants and commissions and stuff like that from these pharmaceutical companies or from what have you. It makes sense that they would, just like if I was a mechanic, I would say I checked your oil, I checked this, I checked all your fluids, I topped them up, and it's, if no one's checking, I can charge you more, and there's nothing wrong with it as far as I'm concerned. I'm making money.
Well, that's dishonest.
That's the world we
Yeah,
live in.
they're
Correct. We
dishonest.
live in a dishonest world. That's exactly the problem. But, like I say,
That
there's
makes you
people...
a pseudo mechanic.
I don't know. They were just honest with me. It shocked me, but they were honest with me.
Okay, your mechanics aside, the world we live in terms of the physics of it, that's why I don't qualify it with natural science. What's the genre we're in? Everything we discuss here is revolving around the physical and natural world. Not revolving because we're on a spinning sphere, I might add, in case anyone trims that out. So that's the genre. We're talking about the physical and natural world. So when we say science here, that's what we're talking about. It's very specific.
I don't think you have to presuppose. I think you don't. You can still use the scientific method whilst not presupposing that there's some definite reality, right? Because the scientific method is just the study of phenomena, right? Whether that phenomena is hallucinated or real or whatever, it doesn't really matter, does it? So long as it's a
Yes, it
phenomena,
does.
whether
It
it's
has to be
construction
repeatable.
of your mind
That's right.
or outside your mind, it's still a phenomena, isn't it?
Well, it's got to be an observed phenomena. In other words, when we're talking about this, anything that's categorized as a phenomena has to be experienced in the first instance. So, yeah, you could say that you're studying something that you're experiencing because you're a brain in a jar and it's created that. This is a philosophy that is like the last chance saloon of a dying argument. In other words, if you can't prove any of your points in any empirical way, just claim you're a brain in a jar and you can't disprove that claim. The vanilla sky, matrix, whatever.
Yeah, say you're in a matrix type rumpus.
We encounter that a lot. I encounter that on 24/7. A lot of people after they'll come in very hard, like, yes, it's definitely a globe, it's been proven, blah blah blah. And then as soon as they realize, well, all of that's bunk, all of a sudden, well, we can't really prove anything, can we? Oh,
How
really?
convenient, right?
But
well, 5 minutes ago, you were certain there was a globe. Now, all of a sudden, you find out there's no globe, and now we can't prove anything at all?
The party of science.
Science
those-
doesn't prove anything, Chocolate.
But those philosophies, those descriptions in simulacra and simulation have all come from the same place. They've all taken logical inference from things like the double slit and the quantum eraser. So the notions that we can have an effect as a knower on our reality are proven scientifically. Now, you can take that and imply through logical inference that, I hate saying this, that we're in a simulation of sorts. Now, that grates me to say, even though it's scientifically been validated. I can't not say it, right? Well, if you're influencing as a person the environment that you're in to a certain degree, and you can show it with experimental validity that you are affecting that outcome, that should empower people as opposed to think, oh, well, then I'm just a brain in a jar. That, like I say, it's the last refuge of a dying argument because it's a very nihilistic way of looking at the world. And I'm not saying it's an invalid philosophy. I mean, it's a fascinating way to view the world. And it's also, in a very minor way, true. You can see the logical inferences that it's been derived from and the route back to things like the double slit or the quantum eraser. And you go, okay, well, we do live in that type of world, but that doesn't mean that the world that you actually experience isn't the world that you're experiencing, and that's all you have to go by. So, yeah, it's a fascinating philosophy to consider, but do you want a nihilistic outlook on your life by taking that philosophy as your outlook? Personally, no, I don't want to. Doesn't mean I can invalidate the philosophy. Yeah, we might be a brain in a jar, but I'd rather take the actual experimental validity and what that actually shows us, and then personally think about it and ponder on it, rather than say we are a brain in a jar therefore because of the inferences that a knower can affect the outcome of a probability. Well, that's what it means. You as a knower affect the outcomes of probability and actualize your reality. That's what it actually means. That's what these experiments show. And beyond that, you can philosophize a simulation out of that. But it doesn't mean we are in one.
It's funny because when I corner my son, that's what he comes at me with. That's his last desperate thing. He said, "You don't even know if I exist or you exist."
You don't have to presuppose a naive realism to still accept that natural science is a valid methodology, right? Because natural science is the study of phenomena, right? You're just saying that you're finding cause and effect to do with phenomena. Whether that phenomena is simulated or part of a matrix, it doesn't really affect the methodology.
Well, it kind of does.
Question
You have
is
a
that phenomenon
that's where you're wrong.
observed or not?
No, that's where you're wrong. You have a direct influence on it. That's why I say it should be empowering. So I don't know, maybe go back and watch Quantum Eraser's presentations on the delayed choice quantum eraser, which is his namesake. He's keeping very quiet, presumably because he's munching breakfast at the moment. But you do have a direct influence over the outcome of your reality, and at a very base level, that is explained in the cause of the effect when it comes to the breakdown of what starts as a probability and becomes an actual thing. You actualize something when you know what has occurred, and knowing that you are having a direct influence on something that prior to your influence was just a probability, to me that's like, you could sum it up in saying, well, the world is your oyster, if you extrapolate it out in a much more positive way, because you do have a direct influence on things. Now, while I say that that's like it's really profound, it's much more simple when you think about the fact that you can literally influence things, right? I can pick things up, I can put things down, I have a direct influence over my life and my surroundings. Now, when you break that down to the quantum level, that still follows in lockstep. It doesn't deviate from the fact that you have an influence over life. So at that level, I can say, well, that is what I experience. Now, can I philosophize that there's something beyond that? Yeah, but it's not necessary. I know that I'm here. It's Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am.
I love that. So simple.
Be careful. You gotta there's a fine line right here, right? Be careful with your impact. It's a multiplayer game. You're allowed to participate. That's the best way I can describe it. Like, nothing's gonna go against natural law, right? You're not gonna suddenly think of a pink elephant turkey squirrel and it's gonna appear. That's not how that's it. No.
I don't need to be careful. I clarified it. So, in terms of when you've got a probability of something, it is yet to have occurred, and you can have an influence on that. Now, yeah, I can, in a very positive spin estate agent style, spin that out into the world's your oyster. But that's no different to saying we've got potential parallel universes, because those other probabilities still exist. No. Once you have had the influence over whatever started as a probability, it's actualized. And from that point forward, you've got no influence over it. It doesn't go back to being a probability that you can alter. Yeah? So in the physical realm that we experience, nothing that I'm physically touching exists as a probability. Now, the light that goes through and diffracts, now, I can potentially influence that if I was to set it up in such a manner that I could determine which path it had taken through the leaf that it diffracted through, right? I could potentially influence that, right? And set it up with controls. Now, that's been done already. So at that level, where you have a probability distribution before your very eyes, I could influence that, right? But that's about it. You know what I mean? Everything else is already actualized. It's already taken its manifest state. So once it's manifest, can you change its state? No. You could have back in the time when it was a probability, but in the same way as beyond the realm that we know, let's pretend, just for the sake of this example, that we have, I'll even give it a heliocentric framework just for the fundies watching. Let's pretend that in the heliocentric model, and that's the world we're living in this example, they've got an edge to the existence of what has currently been created. Now, beyond that limitation, there exists in the quantum realm nothing but possibilities. Now, everything within that realm, though, is already manifest. It's already taken its state. So can you influence anything that's actualized already? No. But is there stuff beyond that that you could influence because it hasn't already been manifest? Yes. Now, if you want to put that in a matrix example, or a computer game example, when you get to the edge of where things have been rendered, yeah? Well, before they're rendered, they're not rendered. They only exist as a possibility. And when you get there, your being there makes them render. Yeah? Well, that's much more akin to what is described by way of the delayed choice or the double slit experiments. the possibility that lies at the edge of the map in a computer game. That's how you could influence it. But those are things that have never been experienced. So if you go to a land that already has been experienced and exists, then it's already in existence and you're not going to influence it. It's not going to pop out of existence and then you come along and say, well, I'm going to influence the probability of its existence hereafter. It's already manifest. There you go. Is that enough?
I heard it wasn't an experiment to double slit.
I love it.
You heard the double slit wasn't an experiment?
That's what I heard.
Why not? Like
Not a
diffract.
natural observed phenomena. I don't know. I remember hearing it going on about it.
Beat you to it. You said there's no phenomena. Like diffracts, Neil. That definitely happens.
I remember that guy Anon really pushing QE to the limit on that.
Yeah, he wouldn't
Pushing
tell
it
him.
to the
That's
limit?
why.
You mean the-
It's that happened because, and I totally get it now, right? When you've got somebody on the ropes, like earlier today, when I'm like, "What's orthographic view?" and the guy doesn't know, are you going to turn around and tell him? No. Well, Anon didn't have the slightest clue what the phenomena was, and it had been detailed dozens of times in dozens of presentations. He just didn't know it, so QE wasn't going to tell him.
Yeah, that was entertaining, though. I remember. I used to laugh my butt off with that.
Been a good show today. Time's just flown by. I've just noticed the show's been running, for me at least, for 2 hours, 47 minutes. That's a long time. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I got
Large.
10 minutes, man, before I got.
Give that guy
I got
props.
10 minutes before I got there.
10 minutes.
What is going on with the audio today?
I don't know. I had an audio issue when I started up. There was all sorts of craziness, but why? Have you got a load of feedback in Discord?
Yeah, I've got a little bit for over the past 10 minutes or so, but yeah, I got 8 minutes before I gotta go.
Okie doke. I was going to round out.
Not that the show can't go on without me.
Not going to go on. I'm going to round out as soon as there's a brief pause to thank that Justice guy for his great comments, because he's been, he's inspired a conversation that's dragged out the after show for an extra hour, which can only be commended.
Yeah, they were some good questions.
Indeed. Any last comments?
Is that guy still here? I wanted to ask him something.
Yeah, go ahead.
He said,
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, he said he would. Yeah, you said you were new to this show, or like, have you been listening to this show for a long time, or?
I found out about Flat Earth maybe a few months ago. Sorry, I found out about Flat Earth maybe a few months ago because what's his name? Eddie Bravo mentioned it. So Eddie Bravo mentioned Oakley, you Nathan, and so before then I had searched for Flat Earth stuff, but the censorship was so much that I couldn't find anything from the Flat Earth side, if that makes sense. So I was always curious ever since I was young that when I had the time, I would sit down and I would try and, debunk this Flat Earth thing. And it's only with the lockdown and stuff that I really had the time to sit down and, do the work. But I found out about this channel through Eddie Bravo's mentioned. And then luckily, Nathan Oakley, your channel, is not off. It's still on YouTube. It hasn't been, deplatformed yet. And then I was just listening to, Black Swan. And then I sat down and I did the trig. I did the trig for the radius of the Earth. And then that's when I knew that, okay, there's something wrong here.
Perfect. Very similar story to John, father of a stolen child. When you realise you haven't got a radius, that's the end of the globe. With that, I am going to say a massive, huge, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
a lovely day.